community where all people can access tools and opportunities to improve their quality of life, allowing them to reach their full potential. During its meetings, the Poulsbo City Council will use this lens to inclusively view its discussions and actions. Mr. Stern, would you like to read the land acknowledgement, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Poulsbo is located on the ancestral lands of the indigenous Suquamish people, for whom this place was known as Tutuklats, or the land of the vine maples. Chief Seattle in 1854 at the treaty signing said, "Every part of this soil is sacred in the estimation of my people. Every hillside, every valley, every plain and grove has been hallowed by some sad or happy event in days long vanished."
Now, would you all stand as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next thing on our agenda is to review the agenda, and as far as I know, I'm looking at staff, there are no changes, so I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Madam Mayor, move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second? We have a motion and a second. Mr. Newell.
Newell, aye.
Pro, aye.
Favor, aye.
Eckert, aye.
McVeigh, aye.
Lived, aye.
Stern, aye.
Thank you, council. Now we're on to public comment. If you have comment for the council, please step to the podium and you have 3 minutes. State your name for the record. Public comment.
Council, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm Sharon Budd, and I'm involved in my community for emergency preparedness. And I'm just wondering what the city is going to do, or how they're going to go about organizing the community, and what they're going to be doing as far as meetings and that kind of thing to organize the community. I know that we did this 5 years ago and had a good success at it, I thought, and want to get going on it again. We're planning to have a meeting at the library on the 27th of August at 4:30 to 5:30 for emergency preparedness, and would like to invite the community. It's just an open meeting for all people to come, and just want to know what your plan is. And will there be CPR training? Will there be CERT training? And how are you going to go about organizing the community? Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Comments from citizens? Okay, I'm not seeing any more comments. The next is mayor's reports and council comments. I'm going to go directly to Mr. Stern. Mr. Stern.
Thank you, Mayor. We on the council received a brief from the mayor this morning on a spontaneous and very large gift that was made to Olympic College for our campus up here that's supporting the Regional Allied Health Center. We have in the audience tonight, and I will invite her up if you would, Interim President Joan Hampton. It's a chance to both meet her as president of the Olympic College. She's the past Olympic College Foundation executive director for a long time and just completed a term as executive director of the Bremer Trust for Bremerton. It's an honor to have you here, President Hampton, and if you could share with us the gift that the mayor shared the knowledge of this morning.
Thank you. Mayor Erickson and City Council, I'm here tonight to ask you to celebrate with Olympic College. As the councilman said, we have received a wonderful gift in support of the Olympic College Poulsbo Healthcare Expansion Initiative from the Tim Ryan family. As you know, this fall, we are standing up programs on the Poulsbo campus for radiology technology, sonography technology, surgical tech, and a few other programs. In fall of September 2026, we'll stand up the paramedic EMT program. These are high demand living wage programs where the students will come out and immediately be able to be employed in the community at job wages that allow them to stay in our community and thrive in our community as citizens of Kitsap County. So our board just last night was able to accept a gift from the Tim Ryan family in the amount of $1 million. That $1 million is directed towards technology, cutting edge student equipment, things that students will get their hands on to train and really be able to practice and learn on the same equipment they'll use when they are in practice. This includes robotics, swinging arms, and things that do all kinds of wonderful things. It's a very exciting gift. This is far beyond what we could ever imagine with state funding alone. In honor of that, we are going to be naming our sonography lab, the Tim Ryan Family Diagnostic Medical Sonography Lab, which will be on the lower level of the new healthcare suite, which is also named after Virginia Mason CHI Franciscan for a major donation that they made earlier in the year. This for us is a huge impact gift. It is part of over 20 years of legacy giving from the Ryan family. The Ryan family, Tim Ryan was first to step forward and create a nursing lab for us with cutting edge technology at that time and nursing beds that would simulate what the students would actually use in practice. He then went on and bought us a MediMan, which is the first robotic used in healthcare education where students actually practice on something that is very lifelike and very, very much what they would see in practice. So he is back with his entire family, generations of his family being involved in giving this gift. We'll use it for hospital beds, for training tables, for simulators, other program supplies, and it will go across the entire healthcare suite of programs that we are standing up. So we are here to thank him for that, to ask you to celebrate with us, and to remind our community that when it comes to Olympic College and our education here, it is really our local citizens and our local business people like the Ryan family who fund these things for us. So if you stop into Chocmo or Crabtree or Vibe or into this building, you see the legacy of the Ryan family and the impact they have had.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Yes, thank you.
When I got the news this morning, I had staff craft a thank you letter for the signature individually of every council member and myself. And this is what the letter says. Tim and Bev Ryan, care of Tim Ryan Construction. Dear Tim and Bev Ryan, on behalf of the city of Poulsbo, we want to extend our sincere appreciation for you and your extraordinary $1 million donation to Olympic College in support of healthcare education. Your generosity will have lasting impact on our community by ensuring that students have access to the highest quality training, facilities, and equipment as they prepare for vital careers in healthcare. We are especially proud that part of this investment will support the expansion and remodel of the Olympic College Poulsbo campus. The creation of the Tim Ryan Family Diagnostic Medical Sonographer Lab is a remarkable legacy that will serve both students and our broader community for generations to come. Please accept our heartfelt thanks for your vision and generosity. We look forward to celebrating the positive outcomes of your gift as Olympic College continues to expand healthcare programs here in Poulsbo. With gratitude. And I have this letter. Before you leave this evening, I'd like every one of the council members to sign it so we can get it off to Tim and Bev Ryan. Ryan Construction is home here. It's right up on 7th Avenue. The Ryan Construction Company is Poulsbo. They have done many, many things in our community. And I am so proud of what they've accomplished as a construction company, but also in their legacy of giving back to the community. They're remarkable people, and I couldn't be happier with what they've done this time. This is really very, very cool. So thank you. Thank you for coming, President. I appreciate it. Any comments from council? Any comments? Thank you. Okay, on to mayor's reports and council comments. I don't know how you can follow that up, Mr. Newell, but you're up. Nothing, Pam? Okay.
Just a heads up to our citizens, it's gonna be another hot weekend, 90 degrees, so be sure to take care of yourselves and your pets and don't get roasted out there.
Don't get roasted. Rick?
I'll just say, we had Chief Seattle Days this weekend and we had several with the graveside ceremony and just another wonderful year at the event, sharing with the Squamish. And I appreciate the invite from Chairman Forsman, I guess there.
Thank you. Thanks to the Ryan family. Thanks for President, is it interim President Hanson or is she the president?
Interim.
President Hanson for being with us tonight from OC. And thanks for the comments about other emergency management. We've been asking some of the same questions about when we'll be rolling this out in the community. We just recently voted and accepted the new emergency management plans from our emergency management director. And I know that City Administrator Gelder is working with him on plans to roll things out in the community. So I would encourage you to contact Mr. Gelder about some of those questions. I think that would probably be appropriate rather than us sharing them from here. But we are very supportive of those efforts as well. And thank you for the efforts to organize a forum at the library for the community. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Britt?
Not much from me. Like Rick said, I was in attendance at the graveside service for Chief Seattle that they do every year, and it's always an honor to be there and very moving tradition. So that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Stern?
I want to thank the mayor for coming to graveside services. Again, Councilman Eckert and Councilwoman Livedall and myself had the honor of representing the city and all of us there. Rhiannon, and there are a couple photos to share just for those who couldn't make it here on council. This is James Forsman, who is the brother of Chairman Leonard Forsman, gave a blessing from the Bible and pulled out this very old postcard and said, most of us have never seen a picture of the younger Chief Seattle. We're accustomed to seeing that one older photograph from the 1860s. And so this is a younger Chief Seattle. And that was a moving moment and a chance to understand and picture the history when we read our land acknowledgement. Then Rhiannon, there's picture, I think, of the, well, here, let me share this then. And my colleagues, they ran out of these gifts. So this is from Herb Kai, who is a member of both Hawaiian ethnic and Maori from New Zealand. He gave me this to present and explain that this handout represents the blankets that used to be given at Potlatch, but were shut down by the Army and the federal forces in order to assimilate Indian tribes in the 1870s. So for many years, they gave out these scarves because that did not cross with the Indian agent. And that's why they still hand these out. So it's a privilege to have this. And then lastly, that's the picture of the actual grave site with the Squamish warriors. And that is next to the Catholic mission and the old cemetery there in Squamish. So just for those who weren't able to make it a sense of it. I don't know if Britt or Rick or Becky want to add anything else.
I'll just add to this, to the symbolism of this representing the blanket. They would tuck 2 quarters into it because you could take the 2 quarters and go and buy yourself a blanket, but that was as much as they could do since they were not allowed to give blankets. That's
Any comments, Rick? I think the thing that really struck me is the generations that were there. I saw Jim Henry and Ed Carrier, who are great grandfathers, and and then the young children that were speaking pretty fluently in both English and Lushootseed. I mean, the tribe is doing a really good job educating their young people about the history and the cultures and the traditions much better than they were 20 years ago. And the kids are actually speaking Lushootseed, which is that's really wonderful to see. It was a very moving ceremony. It always is. The weather was perfect. There's probably 200 people there. It was very well attended. So I'm thanking you all for being there. I was really happy to be there. It was very, very well done. So any other comments, Mr. Stern? Okay, I'm going to go on to my mayor's reports. I have a proclamation to read tonight, and I'm going to read it, and I would like Rhiannon to put a graph up. So this is a proclamation about Women's Equality Day, which is on August 26th. And this is a proclamation. Whereas Elizabeth Cady Stanton and others first I'm having trouble talking tonight. Others first seriously proposed women's right to vote at Seneca Falls, New York on July 14th, 1848. And whereas Susan B. Anthony joined forces with Stanton in 1851, and they worked together over the next half of the century for a women's right to vote. And whereas Carrie Chapman Catt, founder and early leader of the League of Women Voters, entered the struggle later and became a leader in the suffragette movement that helped lead it to victory. And whereas these three women and so many others endured hardships of public humiliation, terms in jail, ridicule, and they did it so that women of yesterday, today, and tomorrow can exercise their right to vote. And whereas on August 26, 1920, just days after Tennessee became the 36th and last needed state to ratify the amendment, the United States Secretary of State signed the proclamation enacting the 19th Amendment. Now, therefore, I, Rebecca Erickson, Mayor of the City of Poulsbo, Washington, do hereby proclaim August 26, 2025 as Women's Equality Day to celebrate the passage of the 19th Amendment of the Constitution, which gave women the right to vote. So, I had a couple graphs that I made. This is wage rates in the United States from 1970 to the 2020. The top of the line where it says 100 is what men make. And this is what women make. And in the far right, the green are Asian women, the yellow are Hispanic women, which means they make 50% of what men make. The brown are Black women, the gray are white women, and the blue line is overall women, just a little above 80%. We still have a long way to go, guys. We have a long way to go. When I was a young woman, my mother told me the story about my grandmother. Her name was Jessie Chapman, and she grew up a farm girl in Indiana. And she went to work in an airplane factory during World War I, believe it or not. And she wanted to be paid the same as men. And they beat her and they threw her out of the factory. Okay, so this has been a struggle that women have been facing for generations. And we're still struggling. We're a lot better off than we used to be, but we still have at least 20% to go, guys. 20% to go. So comments? Any comments? Okay.
Yes, this right is not something we should take for granted.
No, it's not.
Because there are people now on the fringes who wouldn't mind taking it away.
So, yeah. And I graduated from college. I had good grades. I had a degree in economics from the University of Washington, and they headed me towards a typewriter and a secretary's position because it was 1978. That's what I was supposed to do. And I said, I'm not going to curse. Heck no, won't go, not doing it. So it's been a long struggle for women. And, but we're finally achieving a level of respect, but we still have a wage gap that we need to address. Okay, any other comments? Seeing and hearing none. We are going on to board, commission, and outside agency reports. Any board, go ahead. Doug?
Just a heads up, on the first week of September, I'll be meeting with the new port manager. So I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully I'll be able to report back. And if there's anything that comes up on the port, send it my way so that I can bring it up at the meeting.
Okay. Any other board and commission reports? Okay. Okay, so we're going to keep moving on to city administrator and department comments. Rob, go ahead, start it off.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce to you and the Poulsbo community this evening, Camille Borders, who has joined the Poulsbo team as our human resources manager. Probably won't see her every council meeting, but know that she is playing an integral role as part of our team. when as a service provider, and 80% of our budget is people and our ability to provide services effectively and efficiently to the community. HR is an integral part of that team. So I just wanted to welcome her and thank her for joining us. So we look forward to working with her. And then also just wanted to let you know, I did have the opportunity to attend the Washington City County Managers Association conference last week. Had some phenomenal sessions. Sometimes you never know when you look at a conference program as to just how good those sessions will be, but there were some phenomenal sessions around innovation and really kind of giving you a couple of different tools to use as you evaluate sort of your work processes, et cetera. It's sort of what's still serving you and what's not serving you. So I look forward to delving a little bit deeper with the leadership team here at the city on that. Also, been having conversations met today with the police department as well as Deb and representatives from the enterprise fleet management, just starting to think about how do we manage our rolling stock in a way that not only supports it as we can actually fund it on an ongoing basis, but there is a way to kind of manage those assets because they get a lot of use. So starting just an exploration of whether or not that's an option for us going forward. And then I know Heather's not here, but we can't go a week without talking about parking, but I just wanted to let you know, I had a meeting this afternoon with a couple representatives from the LAS parking. And so they actually will be starting in the next couple of weeks doing that business to business contact to start to understand the volume or the magnitude of employees that they have in their roles, and also to talk about the parking solutions as well as getting folks registered onto the license plate system. And then last but not least, I will have the opportunity tomorrow to go out to the BCAT studios. I've been asked to record a engaging Kitsap. It's an 8-minute video, which will really, you don't get a lot covered in 8 minutes, but we will try our best to cover sort of what the change in structure here has been for the city and all of that. So look forward to it. Hopefully I do you proud on that one, but thank you.
Okay. Who's up next? Do you want to say a few words? Oh, you're good? Okay. We'll catch you later. Okay. Jeff, go ahead.
We'll go right down the order here. All right, I'm going to share just one image on the screen here. And this is, give me 1 second. There we go. We see it. Maybe I can zoom in here as well. There we are. All right, so the first department head update is just a special event permit from Coffee Oasis. Coffee Oasis has a new person who was not aware that they need to submit a special event permit application. That's why you haven't seen it come through in the packet. They just notified us on Friday. So we've been working with them in the last few days to make sure they have their ducks squared away. They've been running a small back to school event here right next to the Public Works facility. But new person just was not aware about a special event permit. So what I want council to be aware of is that they are looking to host a special event this Friday. It's a back to school event. They're expecting about 50 kids, mainly the users, the folks who come to the facility and families. They're going to have some games, activities, giveaways, really kind of celebrate the start to the school year, 50 folks. They'll have a Velcro wall, which if council, yes, Britt, yes, if you want to do this, but you put on a Velcro suit and then you kind of just stick yourself to the inflatable Velcro wall.
This is how, this is,
Okay, so you run up to it. Oh, Rob has experience.
is this supposed to be fun?
It's supposed to be a fun time. Yes. Yes. So you can watch, Mayor. So this is happening. We just received the insurance, so they're good with insurance. They're good with all their ducks are in a row. It's just a last minute. They will have their applications in 90 days in advance from here on out. We just want to make sure council was aware. We really try to make sure that they can continue doing this. That's the first update. And if there's any questions, please let me know. I'm going to stop sharing that screen.
I think our insurance carriers must think we're absolutely crazy with some of the things we ask them to insure. I mean, I was thinking about the gigantic Viking bonfires. How do you explain that to someone? So anyway, go ahead, Jeff.
They appreciate us.
They appreciate it. So, okay.
Less
Jeff,
can.
I haven't been down that street in a couple weeks, I don't think. The light pole or utility pole that had been crashed into and we had to, that's all repaired now,
Yes.
correct?
My
That was right on
understanding,
the edge of their parking lot that had been taped up.
my understanding from that, and Diane, feel free to pipe in, but when that happened, there was a driver, I remember seeing the video of that, as PSE came in like the very next day and
Okay.
got that light pole, electrical
Okay.
pole, whatever that
I
was,
was just
fixed
thinking
right away.
It's right in the middle of their
Mhm.
giveaways map there, so.
And I drive past that pretty frequently. I haven't seen
Okay.
any
And
issues.
there was an electrician that came out and was able to restore service to the building later the following week. I think the one thing that might be missing when I drove by was the fire hydrant.
Other
got the
updates.
full update.
Okay.
Other updates are the Sound to Olympics trail ride that we have a variety of elected officials. Final confirmation. We now have a ride back, so it's going to be Poulsbo to Bainbridge on September 5th. We have Councilmember Stern, Councilmember Livedall, Mayor Erickson. 1, 2, 3. Oh, and Rob, hopefully, if he can make it. So if anybody else wants to attend, let us know. We have electric bikes through Cascade Bicycle Club for free to use. And Kitsap Transit has secured a 40-foot bus to drive passengers back from Bainbridge to Poulsbo. And we have a number of elected officials. We just confirmed a few more from Bainbridge Island Metro Parks District as well. Two of their commissioners will be joining. The other updates are, I heard from last week, council is interested in an update about Placer AI. So later in September, we'll be coming and sharing some of the information that we've been using Placer. And so you'll hear that later in September, probably mid to late, so we can prepare a presentation. We were just using it today. The Washington State University runs our learning garden over at Robb Park, and we've had great conversations about updating the MOU and partnering, including getting them involved in our senior programs and doing outreach, and they were highly interested in that. So that was great to see. And then for the mayor, you hear the mayor talk about we have over 1,000 recreation programs. We're at 1,200 now. And that's a program doesn't mean it's a one-time class. It can be one time or it can run 10 times. 1,200 for our small team and our population. We are serving a very wide community, and it's something to be incredibly proud of. And then, can I steal the thunder for the RFP? Okay. The Muriel Iverson Williams Pavilion, we got 5 submissions for RFPs for structural assessment, and staff met today, and we will be notifying folks on what that placement was. And then the final update is the Robb Park Skate Park refresh is a tentative go for a ribbon cutting on September 20th. So pencil that in, please, for September 20th. That is through our volunteers. The lead organizer is out of town right now. We just want to make sure that everything is cemented, but it's looking like it's going to happen September 20th, and I will know more for the next council meeting on September 3rd. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Got lots of ribbon cuttings in September. It's gonna be fun. Go ahead, Diane.
Just a couple things from engineering and public works. I wanted to let you know that the repair on the boardwalk railing is about 3/4 complete. It should be open by the weekend, back to full capacity. And the guys have done a really good job of doing that repair. We added an additional post midway between each span, so it should last for a very long time. Team's doing a great job. Second thing I wanted to let you know is we do have a presentation to the PFD on Monday next week. We have about 2 or 3 updates a year that we provide the Public Facilities District. They're a primary funder of the PERC, and we will be presenting to them on Monday. Their funding has been extended from 2041 to 2056. That's their resource for funding, and we will be asking for some additional funds for our project, as other projects are as well. So wish us luck on that. We did submit on the Third Avenue project the TIB grant application last week, and we have high hopes for that as well. And there are a number of construction projects going on. I drove the chip seal, fog seal project with Mike Lund today, and it's looking very good. And the community seems to be very happy. And I know that sometimes when people hear the words chip seal, they think of the old style and the sharp rocks and all the asphalt and tar that's there. It's definitely very different. I'd encourage anyone that wants to take a look to go up Call Dart and take a look at the work that's recently been done in Calder Heights, and I think you'll be really impressed with the quality of the work that's been done. And we'll continue to do a bigger package next year. Other items, the intersection of Messford and Knoll no longer has a little mini detour, but there is heavy work happening on Languinette and Maranatha. So if you use those roads, you will need to use some alternate routes. It's a minor inconvenience, and we'll have a nice product done, mostly done the end of this summer and completed next spring. There will be more night work on for Vanheimer down at the end of Front Street. They started this week, and we anticipate that's a 3-week project, so people should continue to anticipate work at night. There will be more work on 305 at night for Oslo, and they've been doing a good job of staying pretty efficient with their work, but you will anticipate more work starting September 1st there. And at the south end of Viking, the Plateau Ridge project has been working on a sewer crossing. So when you see the detour there, or the lane shift, that's what that is. That's a sewer crossing, and that will be done by the end of the week. That's it for my updates.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Diane, compliments on the neighborhood street restoration. I had a chance to ride out the Caldart stretch, and it's gorgeous and it's beautiful. The speed bumps are back in. All of it just looks superb, Mayor, and a lot for the council to be proud about in our neighborhood streets program.
I want to give a shout out to one of the flaggers grabbed me up on the Knoll Road project, and they're getting a lot of heat from angry people and getting yelled at. You know, it's construction season out there, people. And so, you know, you're going to run into construction sites. You're going to have to wait. It's just a couple minutes. It's the world is not coming to an end. And it's really, you know, give them a break because they're just doing their jobs. So it's unfortunate people lose their temper sometimes, and I get it. And sometimes you get stuck for longer than you want to get stuck. I get that too, but they're just trying to do their job. So I thought I'd relay their message. Be nice to the flaggers. They're just doing their jobs. So, okay. Anything else, Diane?
No, I think the only other comment is we had a citizen ask about emergency management and the meeting at the library, and that information will be conveyed to Dan Schoonmaker. So no worries.
Thank you. Who's next? Anybody? Deb?
Jeff has voluntold me that I should discuss this. Today we had a wellness event, which was a great wellness committee. They're getting very active in supporting us. And we were actually able to go out in the sunshine today. And Tiffany did a great job of getting the history of the murals. And so we visited all the murals. Jenna and my department, 10 murals. Some of us detoured for a little shopping, but that's okay. We're supporting our local economy. And then we had Jenna from my office made up a special spritzer that was made with some fruit juice, some mint, and some speltzing water. And it was a great opportunity for several of us to get outside and to meet some people that we don't see very regularly. So great job to the Wellness Committee. Thank you.
And I want to add, so if council hasn't met the Wellness Committee, it's Ashley Weller, Helen Cook, myself, Jenna Rieselman, Caitlin Hartley, Kay Davis, Rhiannon Fernandez, and Sabrina Huff. And if I'm missing someone, I apologize, but they put a lot of effort annually to bring these benefits to our staff, and it's just great to see everybody come together. And thank you, Deb, for being voluntold.
I'm glad you were looking at murals, and today's the 10th anniversary of the mural at the Maritime Heritage Museum, painted by Jim Mayo, and it came up on my social media feed. And Jim Mayo is the one that painted the gigantic Viking ship downtown, and he also did the front of Sly's Bakery. There's a woman that's kind of painted on a column next to Sly's Bakery. He also did the Maritime Museum. And then if you've never been under Lindvig Bridge, you should go underneath Lindvig Bridge and see the murals under there, the otters, the landscaping, the beautiful murals that he painted down there. Now, it was supposed to be a troll crawling out from the bridge, okay? But Jim painted a troll. And when the troll was all finished, he said it bothered him so much that he painted over it. And I about had a heart attack. He decided he didn't like the troll, and so he painted it all over. But anyway, beautiful, beautiful murals. And so I just want to give a big shout out to Jim Mayo. He's down with his son down in Louisiana now. He doesn't live here anymore, but he did a beautiful job and made a big difference in the city of Poulsbo. So, okay. Any other comments?
Next time we hire a muralist, you should ask them if they have any superstitions, Mayor.
Yeah, true story. Okay, seeing none, anybody? Anything else? No, chief? Okay. All right, so we're gonna move on to the consent agenda. All that matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the city council for reading and study and are considered to be routine, and it's items 8A through D. And I'd entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve consent agenda items A through D.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Newell.
Newell, aye.
Pro I.
Tabor, aye.
Eckert, aye.
b.BA.
Lived I.
Stern eye.
Thank you, council. And now we're on to the business agenda. There is no business agenda, so it is meeting break time. You guys need 5 minutes? No? We're just gonna go ahead and keep going. Head down to the tables. We'll be with you in about 3 minutes. Okay, folks, let's go ahead and get going here. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of spacing out here.
There's, so hi, I am Debbie from the Finance Department. I think everybody knows me, and I brought with me tonight Larissa Campbell. She's been with the city 7 years in September, so almost 7 years, a little, almost, like 4.5, 5, so we're good. She started in payroll, worked in payroll department, payroll position for several years, then moved on to the senior accountant a couple of years ago, was in charge of the financial statement, and now has moved on to the budget arena. So she is here presenting the quarterly variance reports, focusing on the actual revenues and expenditures in comparison to June's budget. So I will let her take over.
Good evening. Thank you, Debbie. So we are just going to start. We can kind of go page by page, but not to bury the lead, but this is a great report because we are on target bottom line for where we want to be for both revenues and expenditures. And within that big picture, there are just a few items to highlight. And so we'll start with the revenues. Revenues are trending well. We're at 52% of expected revenues overall, and this is again through June 30. And our B&O tax that we've been keeping an eye on, the figures that you see here do not reflect the second quarter that was due July 31st. So the July report will definitely update those figures.
Larissa, if I could
Yes.
just interject for my colleagues. So the
Yes.
variance report was developed where the green or the red, if there was a variance of greater than 15% for what was forecast, negative or positive, that's the basis for that color coding. Thank you, Larissa.
That is correct, yes.
Could you just highlight real quick, because we're going to talk about a little bit later, the potential new public safety tax. We already have the criminal justice safety tax on the report. So if you just highlight what this one is compared to what the one we're going to talk about later.
Right. So, oh, go ahead, Debbie.
Okay, so the criminal justice tax, the city has in the tax rate, your 9.3% that is collected. 0.1% or 1/10 of that is collected in sales tax. And from that 10%, 90% is given to the city and 10% goes to the county, and the county distributes that back to the jurisdictions based on population. So that is a criminal justice sales tax that is coming to us through the county, and that's part of the 1/10%. It is separate than the criminal justice tax that was just approved by legislature, which would be the full 1/10%. So a full 1/10% is more like over 650,000, and this is just that 10% of the 1/10.
And this is separate also from the 911 tax, correct?
Correct. We do not get any of the 911
Right.
tax.
Thank
We get it in the services and the fact that with CENTCOM serves us or Kitsap 911, but we also pay a fee to them. So it supplements that fee.
And then just to highlight the red items that are left in that top section of revenues. So cable tax is running a little low, and those figures again only represent the first quarter. So July will have updated amounts for that. And our leasehold tax is submitted by the state. It is 2 months behind. So we're missing just a little bit, and then those should be updated next month. Yes.
Just wait
Go
for you
ahead.
to keep going down.
Oh,
Where
okay.
you flip the
Where are
page.
you? You're ready for the next page?
No, the highway plan and construction, the federal funding. I assume that there's no problem with that coming in, the 800,000.
I believe the budgeted grants in the budget column are grants that we've been awarded. Is that correct, Debbie?
Right. Part of the 813,000, if I'm remembering, Diane can help me clarify as well, is it is amount that's used in the government fund. So it's planning for for a road project. It's believe it's the study for 8th Avenue that we received in a grant. And so that's why, since it's actual not plans or specification, it's general. So we have that funding secured. They just haven't progressed it far enough in the billing to bill for that.
Okay, so this is, on these kind of things, you have to submit a warrant for reimbursement to get the grant money.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. And so admission tax, those are events based. So we receive those revenues as those event holders will submit their reports. For licenses and permits, franchise and royalty fees, those are the same as the cable tax where they do run quarterly. And
So if I can point out just the
Sure.
bottom line, we're at 71% of the budget. And so as you can see, our development revenue for building structure permits is a little bit higher. And that's all transactional based, but that is trending higher for right now for the first half of the year.
Thank you. And so the next section just represents intergovernmental revenues, mainly grants. And there is also the cannabis excise tax that we began receiving recently. That's reflected in this line. And we do not have a budgeted amount yet. And we'll be looking at that in the mid-biennium review. Yes.
What is, unless you were going to get to this, STWSHCA, kind of little past midway through. I'm just curious what that is.
Yeah, that is Washington State Healthcare Authority, and that is a grant for Housing, Health and Human Services Program. You're welcome. Thank you. And let's see. And then same with the liquor and beer excise tax, we also receive that quarterly. All right, and we'll just turn to our last page of revenues, and then this represents charges for services. So we're doing pretty well there. We are trending high in several categories, so that's good news. And as Jeff pointed out, his 1,200 activities in the city for recreation. So the recreation fees are trending higher as well. Reflects that increase in programming and summer enrollment for camps and classes.
Big one.
And again, pointing out the development revenue. So you can see zoning and subdivision, or actually, no, plan checking a little bit higher. So those are all, a lot of times, one-time revenue. Engineering service fees, about 50% there, but just like to highlight those because they're hard to predict.
So a question on the passport fees, not so much on variance, but just the practice of the passport fees. I know in the past it's been something of a burden, and then at other times it's gone very well and streamlined. It has reimbursed us for our direct and indirect allocation costs. What's the status? Can we characterize where we're at? Because I know in times past, it's been a burden for staff to offer that up on the 3rd floor.
I would, and I can go to city administrator on that as well, as it definitely is a service that the city provides. It is not 100% recouped through the revenue that we collect. And I know that the city administrator has been working with the departments who actually run that program, and they're going to determine the worth and if the city continues to supplement that and if the service is necessary. So you're right on the same page as him.
Deb, what's activity fees? 343 says.
Those are the Parks and Recreation.
We only 151.
So that is just one category, and there were some distribution changes at the start of the budget. So a lot of the fees that we would have seen in activity fees have been moved to program fees.
And that begs the question, how many of these accounts, the way they are structured, are required by state law, and how many of them are stuff that we've just done because we've done it historically?
If you look at all these account numbers here, 341s, and then you'll see activity fees are 347.3, 347.6. Those are all defined by the state accounting manual. And so they have a description of what should be going to those categories. And so that's what
So
we follow.
these are all state defined accounts.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then our next category is for fines and forfeitures. This category represents a lot of traffic infractions, both for citations written by the police department and collected by the court. And so we have a increase overall in this category, and the traffic cameras are in here as well. And then there's been increased enforcement in both traffic and parking, and that's definitely reflected in these revenues.
So, excuse me, on the traffic cameras, is that, is that 6 months? Is that 3 months?
This is a full 6 months.
That's a full 6 months.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So
It's a full 6 months, but we had about a month where, well, full 6 months, but remember the one in the school zone actually was only online the very end of the school year. So that's not a full 6 months of experience. It's probably like a month and a
Okay,
half.
so we've been trending 40 to 50,000 a month, but it's gonna jump because we brought another camera online, and at some point,
And so next,
the red light camera is gonna come online some year, right?
For Highway
some
305.
year, like in another week or so.
Oh, this year.
Yeah, so that's scheduled to go online towards the end of next week. And of course, with school starting up just after Labor
Yep.
Day, that one will come back online.
And what the really good, interesting number to me though, is the traffic infraction penalties, that's our guys out there on the street, writing people tickets, doing their jobs. And, they're really, they're proactive, which is great. That's the way they're supposed to be. So.
Right. Any other questions for fines and forfeitures?
Yeah, under that whole grouping, where we're realizing more than we anticipated, and it's realized into the general fund, is it earmarked for a specific purpose, department, or function? Or is it in fact general fund to be allocated?
Technically, there's restrictions that you're to be using that for law and justice, but as you go through the PowerPoint presentation, you'll see that we spend probably about $5 or $6 million just on operating the police department. So this 200 or 377,000 really is a drop in the bucket. So we're well within covering that. Yeah, and we'll say is some of these budgets were prepared very conservatively, just based on the history. And now that the police department is coming staffed and the new direction is now we're starting to realize those, and we'll continue to update those budgets more with activity.
Sorry, the situation that is out in Liberty Bay, would that, the impact of that show up in the fines and forfeitures?
Right, you'll see that under boating safety fines. However, most of the activity that they do in the harbor does not have a revenue stream with it. It's going to be more cost outgoing to regulate that as opposed to bringing money in.
Yeah, that's, and regarding the cost going out, even though, this is looking at revenue streams, would it show the impact of that cost going out?
Yes, when we get to the expenditures, we have a separate program to track the marine safety expenditures. So we're getting there.
Okay, just trying to understand.
No, it's yeah.
Thank
Good
you.
question. Revenues have to come in one side and the expenditures have to go. So you never see the net effect.
And then our last two categories, miscellaneous, that's where we hold our investments, which are still trending quite well. That definitely helps our general fund programming. And then you'll see the one highlighted item there, sales of surplus. That is just a little low because we haven't run the budgeted items through the surplus process yet.
What's related to that? What investment services fees? Could you explain that to me?
Yes, so let's see. Those are.
I can tell you what they are very quickly. Sorry. I didn't want to interrupt. What happens is the finance department invests money for every one of our funds. And so when we invest those on behalf of your water fund, your sewer fund, your real estate excise tax, the general fund charges a fee to come back to support those functions.
Okay.
And so as you've seen our portfolio grow, we've been doing a lot more activity. We have something expiring every month. But I will tell you is with the cash flow going out and not going to debt, yeah, you're going to see our portfolio start to dip just a little bit. But
Yeah.
that's what those fees are made up is it's charging for the services that we provide.
Go ahead, Gary. This
Thank
is
you.
free form. Go for it.
Thanks, Mayor. Back to Councilmember Stern's question about how the funds from traffic cameras, et cetera, going into the general budget are going to be used. My recollection is some of those funds we had earmarked for the addition of the additional court administrator, correct?
Yes.
Okay. It
Correct.
wasn't just all police officers per se. It was,
Correct.
Yeah.
It goes, first, your first cost will be to pay for the camera lease, which is about
Yeah.
155,000. And then we did bring on the court person, a full-time anticipating 50% would support the cameras and 50% that would later support the parking. So. Mhm. So good news, bottom line is we're at 52% of our revenues for general funds. That's right on target.
Absolutely. And we can move on to some expenditures. I told you first. Yeah, so expenditures will, we're looking right about the same. We're at 50.12%, so right on target overall. And the expenditure report is broken down by individual departments. And so there are also non-departmental charges, and some of those will definitely vary from time to time. For example, central services, those have contracts in them. So when contracts have been paid, those are usually just one-time costs. Yes,
Larissa, regards to municipal court,
yes.
between the red light cameras and normal enforcement and now adding to it parking enforcement, there's going to be an impact on the muni court. Are we anticipating a budget adjustment or staffing or other mitigation? What's the anticipation of the impact?
Right. So this salary does reflect the budget increase when the traffic cameras were bought online for that full-time staff member. Did that answer your question? Okay. Okay. Anyone else have any departmental questions for page 4?
With everything that's going on, you're going to see increased numbers for marine safety. You see the 711% up there. You're going to see even more money that we're going to have to do some budget adjustment for in order to do the increased informs and enforcement on the bay.
That
Just
is
heads up. We're going to blow the budget on marine enforcement. How's that for? Yeah.
And some of those expenses will be offset by revenues for our marine safety grant. Not all, but those reimbursements are submitted also quarterly. So we should have a little bit of offset there as well.
Debbie,
And-
so with the new position, it was intended 50%, the new court position, that is 50% from the cameras, 50% from parking enforcement.
That's really what the discussion was when we approved that position, because when we originally evaluated, I think they said, the court said it would take about a half-time person. We knew that additional enforcement was, and with the growth of the service being provided by the police department, that's why we went for the full-time position. So that was the anticipation.
Okay, so I would assume right now, since primarily the cameras are running, but we haven't really got to the enforcement yet. It's being primarily supported by the cameras. But do you anticipate once we really engage in enforcement and increase our fines for the tickets, is that
For
going to
parking.
balance out? Yeah, for parking,
Yeah.
is that going to balance out like the original plan better? Or is the cameras really going to still carry the load?
From what I'm hearing is the camera enforcement and tickets coming through the court are much higher than we originally anticipated for a halftime person. So right now, I think they're looking at, can this be absorbed by the additional person, or they may come back and say, we're not able to support all of this. That's just from what I'm hearing. I haven't talked specifically to the courts, but I would assume if this person, and I think that's part of the discussion on, they also do passports twice a month. And so looking at how can we best provide those services, but it's being supported by the cameras, but the workload has become much heavier than what we thought.
Yeah, we're going to need probably another person in the Muni court. The other thing Doug Tabor just brought to my attention is the care and custody of prisoners is at 68%. We have increased jail costs, and we are also putting people in jail. So our police department is very active, and so those lines we're going to have to look at carefully as we go forward.
Yeah, and pointing out on that one specifically is for several years since the COVID event, our jail costs had gone significantly lower and we had a lot of budget capacity. So we lowered that projection this year, looking at the prior year's trend. And so now as we're getting busy, I'm sure that we'll probably have to look at it mid-year and see whether it's supporting that or not.
Right.
But yeah, the costs are going up. They're not going down. So.
Madam Mayor, can I
Yeah.
just, going back to passports? And when you realize that we are offering that service every week. And it's between the clerk's office and the court right now. And it's not just one person all day on a Tuesday, it's two people. So when you think about it, between the clerk's office and the court, you have 4 days, solid days each month that are devoted to that versus processing other things. And the same thing with the clerk's office. So between the both, you've got at least 8 days worth of effort that could be doing something specifically that's city related. So something to bear in mind.
You would think with the passports, people would have figured out by now how much of it they could do online, but still many people do everything in person. And, if you go over to Seattle, you can do it in 24 hours. But they still are doing this. So it's something we'll probably end up discussing about how we
Is it
want to handle that
legal
service.
for us to add our own city surcharge to help cover the costs?
I don't know the answer to that.
We do. These are legally mandated. And so the city collects, that's why a person
portion of
coming
it,
in and
yeah.
apply for a passport, they bring in 2 checks. One check goes to the passport agency and one check comes to the city for processing. I will also say is when you're getting a passport, if you can go online and do renewals for a new passport, you have to come to a person and be sworn in and show all of that documentation. But there are other places that are offering those passport services.
But do we control what we can charge for this? Or is
No.
that's what I
We
thought.
can't control that?
We don't
It's-
control the amount.
Right.
I did pay a surcharge for my baby and she did come here and get her first passport, which I have to say was really special. So, I mean, I understand if it doesn't make financial sense. but-
Correct in assuming we can't limit it to just city residents. We have to service the whole county. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. I believe, I'm not sure of the rules, but I think you can
We might want to
limit
take a
it.
look at that.
Yeah.
And I would hate to abandon passports altogether because some other jurisdictions have. And I think it is a real convenience to our citizens. So before we scuttle it, I would be interested in taking a look at just limiting it to city residents perhaps.
Well, and that's good. Our city administrator, Mr. Gelder, will come forward with some recommendations as he talks about the people impacted.
And the last item I wanted to highlight, we're on page 5, is just the positive variance for the traffic cameras, and that reflects that not all the cameras have come online yet. So those expenditures will increase as we are billed for the increased cameras. And then this last page, oh, go ahead.
Went past one.
Did I go past one?
Yep. So,
What page are we on?
No.
Yeah.
It's
Debbie.
all on the
It's Debbie
screen.
deciding. Clerk. Clerk in control. What page would you like to go to?
engineering at 25%. What's going on? There's a $2 million budget. You're at 25%. Is
So,
that,
oh, go ahead.
we lost a lot of people or?
Hi.
Part of it I can help with. Part of it has professional services specific to the programs that they're running. And then they also do some of their wages and benefits go back to the projects, and Diane can probably fill in any others.
We just got a lot of projects going on.
But it's primarily professional services.
So you're under executing. Do you expect that to stay under executing, or is this deferred billing that's going to come in? I mean, we're 6 months in and you're just wondering if this trend's going to continue, Mayor.
Well, I think there's a couple things going on in the engineering department. I think the numbers don't reflect the numbers that go to escrow for projects, and that happens later. Also, the engineering side has been really highly billable on projects, as Debbie mentioned. So those are the two things. I wouldn't call it under executing. I think that the number for engineering was a little bit high based on the anticipation of escrow.
Well, so
yeah.
Mayor, just to counter, we budgeted $2 million expenditure here. My question is, do we expect to spend $2 million in this area, or is this being covered by other projects? It sounds like it's being, the staff's being covered by other projects. We may be under at the end of the day, we don't need $2 million budget in this line.
I'm not comfortable having this conversation. I don't know the details. I'll get with that.
Clarifying that grant that we were talking about at the beginning that we hadn't received, the expenditures are recorded here. So that's why we haven't received the grant, because we haven't expended
Okay.
through the money for
So
that grant as well.
Professional services associated with that grant will show up here.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm not comfortable having this conversation about this particular line because I don't know the particulars in the department. So.
That's okay. That's why
Yeah.
we're having this conversation as a team to look at the financial stat. That one stands out
Right.
as a large number of variance. And it's just, if it's
Well,
okay because there's an $800,000 professional services contract going out in the fall and it's going to match up with the grant. Okay, that's that makes sense.
I put on my private sector hat here and I look at the budgetary numbers and realize that they're all just really, really good educated guesses. Sorry, but that's my attitude. So.
So I just pulled up the line level in our system, and the budget for professional services is 893,000. And just year to date, we've spent $434. So that is the part that is, yeah.
So if you see good news, 50% of the budget expenditures, right where we anticipate to be, with obviously some outliers.
There's a reason why Doge exists.
And so our next page, we've moved on to page 8, unless there are any last questions for expenditures. And this is just a visual representation of the prior pages.
General fund only.
General fund, correct, general fund only, that's right. And then the first chart is the full budget, and then second one is actual expenditures to date. So. So this next report, we moved on to page 10, and this just reflects how all the funds are doing at the high level. And so our general fund, like we said, right around 50% for both revenues and expenditures. And then we have our normal fluctuations within the special revenue funds, and a lot of those are supported by taxes, and some of those taxes report on a 2-month lag from the state. And then the non-voted debt fund, we transfer in a portion of the debt due every month.
So you'll see those less because most of our principal payments are due in December. Yes. So we pay interest for the first half. And so there's really nothing outstanding on this page because almost all of this is project driven.
Yes, that is correct. And then this just represents our financial management compliance, how we're staying within our guidelines of having 2 months of operating cash and maintaining that 12%, not falling below 12% of operating revenues. And then these charts are also just visual representations of the prior 2 pages.
So, and just helping you too is because the mayor came into my office and says, are we really at $99.99 million for a budget for all of our funds? And the answer is yes. And you can see why is the capital projects here make up a significant piece of that pie. And so when we talk about capital project, we're talking about all of our utility projects. We're talking about the perk is built in here, the cottages. So all of those, so that makes up a lot. What we are going to do next time is what shouldn't be in here, and we'll exclude it next time, is the transfers out, because it really looks, but those only make up about $9.5 million of that, but it really is a duplication of expenditures. So we really are at about $90 million planned. I don't think we'll spend that because we're not going to be that far into the project, so they'll carry over to the next year, but that number is valid.
To me, there's a whole bunch of timing things going on here, because there's no way in heck we can do that level of work in 1 year. Okay, I mean, that number's there, but I mean, I marched into Deb's office and said, what the heck, what is this? You know, so, yeah, there's the timing, there's some real timing factors going on here, that where we have presented the numbers, but they're not going to be done for a while, I think is the best way to put it.
Could I give you,
It's getting caught up a lot sooner.
could I give you $1 so we could be at an even 100 million? Be much
That's-
easier.
It's rounded. You might need a little bit more.
$100,000.
Okay. Yeah, and this is just a reflection of how our investment portfolio is doing, and then
So reminding you again, we use an investment advisor, so keeps us very well liquidated, secure. But as we continue to do the projects and until we go for debt, we're going to start seeing that portfolio dip just a little bit, but it'll come back.
and so these charts are just a comparison of our investment balance for across all the funds from month to month, and then for the 5-year span going back to 2020. And the bottom graph, you'll see a little bit of a dip for June, and that does represent the land purchase. So that was an $860,000 land purchase, which dipped our cash for that.
So our cash flows, our cash effectively is doubled in 5 years. Yes.
Cash and investments, yes.
Yes.
You will see it
Yeah.
come down a little bit more next month too, is because we're transferring to cover the cottages.
Absolutely. And then just the next area is an overview of all the projects broken out into our different areas. And so in the top, we have the Nordic cottages, which are just about ready to be finished. And then this also holds the perk, the Rab Park caretaker residence that, if I remember correctly, you discussed last week. And just some tenant improvements for the public works building, excuse me. And then just the color coding, purple are projects that are in progress right now. And then gray is either upcoming or on hold, and then the blue are completed.
So I don't see any blue up there, so that tells you how busy everybody is.
Shouldn't the Play for All Park be blued out? Is that not done?
This was through June, and so I think they were still doing a little bit more work up
Okay.
there. And also too is what I will say is about the Jeff had come to you, Mr. Osbeck had come to you too, is the Rob Park is now coming a little bit under budget. Well, not a little bit, it's coming under budget. So you're not going to see it expended. And what they're using, a portion of that savings is they're using it to build the rock wall at the Morrow Manor Park. So we're just not doing an amendment within the projects. But so that one will show, I think he said it's coming in almost 400,000 under budget, and we'll use about 200 of it for the wall at Morrow, as I think. Trying to put words in his mouth, but we've been working on his budget. That's why my numbers are fresh in my head.
And Nordic cottages continues to run pretty close to budget. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great.
It's an expensive budget, but it's pretty close.
That's right. And for transportation, we have our Knoll Road project going. Finn Hill Overlay 3rd Avenue from Mo to Hostmark is getting started. and ADA curb ramps, which I believe are near completion. Is that correct, Diane? Yes. Okay.
So, and as always, if you get through this and look in more detail, we tried to include it in the package, but feel free to reach out to us because we can help with any individual questions that maybe pop out at you later. So now looking at, we'll move on to what our sales tax is. So this is showing.
Cover utilities or not?
No,
No. Okay, we're good.
I think everybody has seen it. So, so moving on to sales tax, we can see that we've collected the money through July, but it's through activity through May. The good news is we're about 1% over where we were last year, which is good because what we received last year was a little higher than what we have budgeted. So we're trending well. And what I'm hearing from my neighbors is we're trending a little better than our neighbors, but it definitely is flattening out.
Quick question.
Mhm.
Column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Column 6, 24 to 23, or is that 25 to 24?
Oh, no, that would be 24 to 25.
Okay.
So 25, yeah. So sorry about
And-
that.
And just looking across the green line year to date, so if I look at 2022, year to date was 2.18 million,
Correct.
and this year to date is 2.21 million.
Yes.
Still said this before, remain concerned, retail sales in the city have been flat for you now 3 years. That's within 1.5%. That's within 2%. Yikes. That's what I'm saying. With inflation,
And a lot of
expected just if we were selling the same amount of whatever donuts, we would have.
And a lot of the fluctuation you can see here is a lot of times in construction. So this year's construction you can see is about $10,000 less than where we were last year. But what's nice is we are very well diversified. So a lot of times what we don't make in construction, we make up in retail trade. It seems to me like retail trade and construction, it's not meant to be, but it seems to fluctuate the same month and kind of even it out a little bit. But I think as you've heard, construction is starting to slow a little bit for some of it, but some of it that's still booming. You know, they talked about Oslo taking off and some of those. So we'll see. So looking at year to date, we're about 8,000 under where we were last year for year to date figures. And then looking at the trend, you can see we're pretty flat among all these months and the average trend for those months. So we're trending right to kind of where the average is, but definitely staying fairly flat, but consistent, which also leads to why we stay pretty conservative in our revenue projections, anticipating that. Looking at the categories that collect it, you can see that about 50%, almost 50% is retail trade. And the next category would be construction, about 17%. Last year was 16%. The graphs still stay pretty consistent. Accommodation for food and services, a little bit lower than last year, but still a very healthy category. And then going down, if we look at the retail trade and what makes up that category, that's where I say it shows a very good picture where you're diversified. It's not one specific category. Yes.
Though it's not one category, I can't help but think of the fact that there's not really an increase or a change, but yet we have stores closing, that, there was, which one up there, the office store that closed, and then the Rite Aid was recent. Wouldn't those fold in as impacts? I know that that's like a drop in the bucket in some sense, but
no, those will definitely impact, and that's probably offsetting as we talked about the increase in rates and the reduction of that revenue is lowering. I think Rite Aid just closed, so this may not have caught up with that closure, so we might see more of an impact. But it's interesting. We've had other businesses close and we track it, and some it's not an overall impact because some others absorb it, but it's definitely, this is why we look at it every month and we try to monitor it with the budget, because sales tax is our largest stream of taxes in the city. And also too, is it's not only affecting our sales tax and our general fund, it now would impact your affordable housing sales tax and the transportation benefit district tax. So we watch all that very carefully to see what happens.
One of
Yeah.
the, one of the interesting things about historically, these particular graphs is that we used to get a lot more money for motor vehicles. Okay, a whole bunch more for motor vehicles. And now it's just, it's not, I mean, it's still material, but it isn't like, it used to be those circles were like half motor vehicles. And that's just not the
Yeah,
way.
I'd say motor vehicles used to be about 50% of this retail trade many, many years ago when they were up on Viking Avenue.
Yep.
And it probably was about 50% of our overall sales tax income. And so that's why I said
Yeah.
the city has worked really hard to diversify. So now that you have the college marketplace, they've kind of absorbed a lot of those losses that we've taken. And also, though I think you've seen Viking Avenue grow with some of your dining out and eating out, and you do have the car dealership. So it's growing.
Yeah, the last line under sales tax revenue by SIC code, it says public administrator. Is that supposed to be public administration?
Yes, it probably cut it off. It's the categories that are actually defined by Department of Revenue.
Okay, all right.
For anyone who might be confused, does sporting goods refer to like the campers that are for sale on
Yes.
Viking? Because that can't just
Yes.
be.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
We just have to be careful when we talk about individual businesses. Yeah, so percentages are great. So no, it's a very valid point. Yeah.
Yes.
Or the fishing stores, right? We have the fishing stores.
Do you have any sense, Deb, that like with what Pam was asking with, things are closing, but yes, some of our other stores are picking up, but is it also that now that we collect sales tax for online sales, which historically in the past didn't, so is it some of it that it's being supplemented by the fact that, okay, if Friday closes, people are just turning to Amazon, but yet we still get that sales revenue from a sales tax perspective? So that's why we're not seeing necessarily a huge dip when a store closes.
Right. That's a very, very valid point. So thank you for bringing that up. We saw obviously our sales tax when everybody was thinking when COVID hit that it was going to be this huge factor, and everybody around were predicting about a 25% cut in revenues, and everybody saw growth because of exactly that people did more online shopping. So that's right. That is absolutely supplementing some of those closures. So that is the sales tax report, and then going on to a real estate excise tax, which kind of helps us keep aware of what's going on with the home sales. It's all transactional based, so it's very hard to predict, and that's why we're so conservative in what we project in this fund. But we did bump up the budget to the $700,000 for both 24 and 25. And the good news is we're at 62%, which through June, we would project to be about 50%. We have exceeded the revenue projections, and so we should be at 50, we're at 62. So we should be meeting those revenue projections this year. And this does have restricted uses that we have spelled out in our city improvement plan, partially covering debt for City Hall. This is also planned sources where we plan to do the debt for the perk, as well as the Knoll Road that we're going to eventually go for. So we have it very well laid out. And the good news is by building the reserves, when we have those dips, which we did see when we had City Hall debt, is we were able to go into the reserves from this and pay the debt as intended.
I've certainly seen a lot more individual houses for sale lately. But do we have
Prices have
any of our progressing developments, like are any of the one coming on that by the end of the year, we're gonna see it like a whole new development essentially go up for sale that will impact this? Like you said, we're slightly ahead, but
Well, we have two large developments that are selling right now, which is Liberty Bay Vista and the one up by Vinland, which I've forgotten the name with, I can't remember. It's KB Homes up there by Vinland Elementary that are selling. But the prices seem to be softening a little bit. It takes time and they're softening. And so it's softening. It really is.
I just wondered if I know we've done there's been a lot of building, like, or work to build. I didn't know if any new sort of unaccounted for developments will hit before the end of the year.
We've got actually 3-4 apartment complexes headed, but these are all next 5 years. Okay. We've got 5 or 6 new subdivisions that are in the pipeline. And I was looking at the numbers today. We got almost 950 housing units in the next 5 years coming online.
So a lot of what we're seeing built right now is really gonna be more impactful next year, the year after as those,
Well,
not this year.
the housing developments, they just come like clockwork. We seem to have 2 or 3 going at any given time. It's just the way it is. What's different now than we've had before is not only do we have these subdivisions, single family housing, but we have apartment buildings coming online. Okay, which we have not had that before. That's a new twist. You know, the pipeline is very consistent, very full.
Yeah, I guess that's another question. How do the apartment buildings reflect in the excise tax?
When they purchase or sell the entire complex, or if they change, what happens sometimes is an unintended benefit. It's happened to us several times. For instance, when Albertsons changed ownership, they have to pay real estate excise tax. And so if the apartment changes ownership or changes corporation structure, we collect real estate excise tax. So it's not necessarily when they sell individual units unless it's condominiums, but it's the entire complex.
Yeah.
So that is it pretty much for real estate. Those are our day-to-day sales. And so I worked with the city administrator and we've come up with a presentation. Let me see if I can stop sharing. Okay. And this is talking about
city is really strong. I think relative to our neighbors, we're doing fine. In fact, it's really quite remarkable. So we're strong.
So the purpose of going forward with this presentation was to focus on some of our revenue streams, what those revenue streams support. Looking at the long range vision, and then I know there's discussion about what is going on with their business and occupation tax. So it's looking out, hopefully getting a longer picture for us, and then focusing on what some of those revenues and expenditures are. So the first thing is we know is we are a service agency and we've supported a lot by taxes with the exception of our utilities. So some of those primary taxes that we collect, property tax, sales tax, business and occupation tax, utilities, excise, and admissions tax. So we saw all those tonight. So those are all governmental and not many restricted uses on those. So focusing on each tax group, when we look at the property tax for 2025, the budget is about $3.1 million. And looking over the average, it has an average growth of about 2.5%. Now, if you remember, the legislature is very strict and legal restrictions on this growth. You can only increase your levy by 1% above the highest allowable levy, which is usually your last year's levy. But then you're also capped out by your rate and or that 1%. So that's why if you're allowed 1% by the state, why we've grown it about 2.5, because what offsets that is your new construction. So you collect your 1% above the highest allowable levy, and then on top of that, you can collect the tax on your new construction coming in. And so looking out over the several years, as we've talked about, Poulsbo has been growing and that new construction is added to that value. So the council directions, which we've always kind of used, is we said, well, we want at least about 4.5%, about $140,000 going to capital street projects and the capital parks projects. So you can see that is not a lot of money for the cost of those projects. And we put that there every year. And so we have been luckily to have very good grant writers and very active directors that have received grants in order to supplement those programs. And a few items we've gone out for debt. But that is the amount of money that we put there. So it's not a lot. And then for our street operations, we support, this is for your street sweeping, your side light, your landscaping on the edge, your striping, all of that, your signals. Also a huge cost of the streets are your street lights. So we transfer about $689,000. Now that was growing to a amount where the streets were going to need a lot more money of our taxes to support it. And what happened is when you pass that 1% for the transportation benefit district, about 23%, or it was reduced to about 23% coming from the general fund, because we were taking 25% of that tax and putting it straight to our street maintenance to help with some of those patching and some of those items going on. So if we take all of those planned expenditures, it leaves about $2.1 million remaining. These are all in round figures that is supporting the rest of the governmental operations. Then moving on to sales tax. So again, we have a budget in 25 about $5.6 million. Looking at that growth, which we all noticed in the last slide, and thank you to Councilmember Newell for pointing out, average growth about 1% over those 5 years, so not growing a lot. And we know expenditures grow much higher than 1%. The direction that we use this for is these are the things we've earmarked, is we put 7% to the capital replacement fund. That is where we are purchasing some of our computers, some of our governmental trucks for your parks, your cemeteries, all of those things. And then for your street operations equipment, some of those items. Also put aside 200,000. We're putting 200 in anticipation of our software update that we are getting ready to move forward on. And then police equipment, every year you've been putting aside $8,500 to support. So we didn't have that great one-time big replacement for all of those rifles. And so now we're building that up so they can circulate those and keep those safe and moving with the current inventory. And then again, the remaining funds are used to support all of the rest of the governmental operations. Now, if you look at this chart here, what I wanted to point out is it looks like, wow, we had a banner year in 24. I mean, part of it is the graph over here doesn't have a lot of numbers in between. But where the budget is always acted conservative under the council's direction is do not project more in the year and what you've collected the year before. So in 23, we collected right about where we budgeted in 25 because we didn't know where 24 was going to end up at that time. So in 24 now, you've seen we've collected a little bit more than we budgeted, and that's where our 26 budget is set at right now. Yes.
So Debbie, I was going to wait till the end, but this seems like the opportune time. One thing that has confused council from time to time, and I think this practice goes back some 20 years, when we put the full budget together, now our biennial budget, the 2-year budget, we're always showing a transfer from reserve to balance the expenditure. And then at the end of the term, we reconcile, we never draw on those reserves. And those can be meaningful numbers, anywhere from 700,000 up to 1.2, 1.5 million. Is that a practice we should continue with? It creates some confusion. And we've never really drawn on the reserves in the end to balance the budget.
There's a couple ways to go about it. Part of it is we are healthy because we act conservatively. We've been able to get through those recessions because we've maintained a fund balance. We've struggled the last couple of years because our fund balance has grown. And is it healthy to keep that much of a fund balance by possibly declining in your services? And so that's a balancing, and that's why we continue to plan to go into reserves higher than normal. When we get down to a few more slides on this, you'll see that some of those were built in the general fund reserves because of our treasury dollars, because of some grants coming in, so because of these one-time development fees. So I don't think it's wrong to act conservative because that's going to carry us through things. I also think too, is you need to ask the question of, we are only putting $140,000 a year towards some of our capital projects. And is that enough? Because we are collecting all of these revenues in anticipation of supporting all of those expenditures. So it really becomes a policy question on where it is. The good news is we've done conservative and we haven't had to use those reserves very minimally. And that's what will carry us. When we're talking to our neighbors, they're not in as strong a position as the city is right now. So I feel very blessed that we have been a little conservative on those.
Well, the bottom line is that we had 25 million 5 years ago, and now we have $50 million reserves, money, cash. We've been very, very conservative. That's a policy that the council has seemingly maintained. I think that sometimes it's hurt us because it's starved us for resources at times where, I mean, we had to wait a long time to get the money for the extra cops, for instance, which I found very troubling. But Deb's right, we're stronger than any jurisdiction in the county right now. And it's because we have acted conservatively, maybe a little too conservatively. I think that, you know, we're not in the profit-making business. We're not supposed to be making a profit here. That's not what we're supposed to do. And so, you know, I think that we need to take some of these resources and direct it at some capital expenditures and making sure that we're adequately staffed. My opinion.
And it could reduce the amount of gopher debt. I do want to clarify, when you say we have $50 million, that is a combined total of all our funds, and a substantial amount of that funds our utility funds, and we are now starting to get caught up on our bills from the county. So you're going to see some of those funds deplete.
fact
About
remains is-
a general fund is about $8 million in cash or $9 million, and that has grown. That has almost doubled in the last several
doubled.
years.
Okay, the graph she showed, it was everything, but the fact is the general fund itself has also doubled. The cash flow, the cash that we have. So then that begs the question, are we adequately staffing the city? Are we adequately, directing services for our citizens the way we should and not using the money that we have? That's a question for the council to determine. I think we're doing a pretty good job. I think we're doing a pretty good
I
balance.
think we're doing a pretty good job too, Mayor, but I want to echo your concerns about sometimes, there's a danger to being too conservative sometimes. For instance, I would have hated to miss the opportunity to purchase the additional perk property because we were being too conservative. We were able to do that, but there are opportunities that come along sometimes that we could miss if we are being too conservative, and that could hurt us in the long run. And I just want everybody to be conscious of that.
I mean, I think this is just an ongoing question, so I'm just checking in again, but is there any further clarity, or do we have concerns over money from the federal government for projects?
Luckily for operation wise, federal funds don't affect us too much in our operations. It may affect your projects, some of your transportation projects and park projects. That's where it is. And that's maybe where, and the reason is we were able to pay for that property outright is because we did have those savings, right?
Could you go back to the property tax real quick? Yeah, so I agree. Yeah, I don't think we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot or our citizens by not staffing appropriately. But one thing I kind of noticed, and I think it kind of goes back to this conversation. We're putting money to street operations and we're doing street maintenance with chip seal and things like that. But what we're not doing anything about is street replacement. And so that's where I think as we start to talk about, do we have money that we need to do something with? I would like to look at, some of our older neighborhoods and our older streets where the streets are past the point of just chip seal and resurface to where they truly need to be replaced. Because we don't really have, as far as I've seen in my time on council or watching council, we have not ever discussed or have any plans to go out into our neighborhood, our older neighborhoods where the streets are failing or have failed officially by engineering standards and start replacing them. And that's going to become more of an issue as we go.
I believe Diane can help you with that.
I agree. I was bouncing in my chair over here. Yeah, especially neighborhood collectors and the residential streets are very difficult for us to get funding for. Obviously, they're not federalized, so there's a gap there. I would say that the chip sealing and seal coat operation has been coming in very cost effectively and extending the life of the streets that we've done that work on. We could expand the number of streets that we're doing that on as well and extend the life of those and pick up a few of the neighborhood collectors that need some extra attention. Thank you.
Yeah. I just know from talking with Mike that there's just some that we didn't have the money to fix them when we could have, and now they're just past that point. So I just think it's worth something in the future if we're going to look at, do we have too high of a fund balance and how should we spend that money to really benefit our citizens? Those older streets, probably something that should be on that document.
And the corollary is pedestrian safety, sidewalks. Any number of the neighborhoods weren't built with sidewalks, and we need to study that. That's not part of the neighborhood streets right now. It's a subtopic called pedestrian safety, but that's something also.
Well, there's a good portion of our neighborhoods that don't even have sidewalks, like all of Old Town, Ridgewood come to mind. So we've got a lot of stuff, but don't forget, this is a remarkable conversation you all are having. You're talking about being able to spend money, which is, I think we're the only jurisdiction in the county that's having that conversation. Okay, so, and it's because of the stewardship of Deb and her team that we are in this position. So the conservatism has served us well, although sometimes I had admit I've been chafing a little bit around the collar, but it served us well. So I want to say thank you. So.
And if I could just add, I think this is exactly why we wanted to have this conversation. We really need to begin to have that robust, overarching, inclusive conversation around revenues and then get to the expenditure side of things. I think there's no one that doesn't acknowledge that we're not in a profit-making business, but we also have to be sustainable and have to be balanced in terms of our ability to deliver services. So as much as there might be able to be some way to find space for positions here or there, getting back to Councilmember McVeigh's comments, what I took from that was sort of the opportunity funds. You know, there's the ability to say, okay, if you have more than you need in your reserves, okay, you can spend some down, but if you're doing ongoing cost decisions, you need to make sure that they're sustainable. But if you have excess capacity, how can you make strategic investments that achieve the goals of council in terms of making sure that we are able to provide and support the infrastructure that is our primary mandate to our community?
Okay.
Well, like, for example, Housing, Health and Human Services Department, she outdoes herself paying for the department with grants, but we haven't made it like an officially sustainable part of our budget, but we've come, I think, to depend on it greatly. So
I think Kim is real now. I think she's part of the general fund. If I'm not, she's not grant dependent.
Correct. The
We
general.
call it being real when you're not, your salaries aren't dependent on a grant. So.
So yeah, so we are not depending on grants to cover her salary or her support salary and some of her operations for that department. But some of the programs definitely are supported by grants. So then looking on at the utility excise admissions tax, that's about a $3.3 million revenue. The average growth on this is about 3%. And so this is one you can see steady growth on because I think everybody at home pays more on their utility bills. Right. And so and where that also can fluctuate is if the city decides differently on the internal utility taxes collected. Looking at the B&O tax for this year. So I added a couple little bullet points because I was able to get history today that I didn't have last week. So right now in 25, it's about $1 million budget. Well, it is $1 million budget. We didn't have any tax history to go with this. So we were using our neighbors on what they were collecting based on their rates. We've collected 2 quarters. And just to let you know, is the revenue coming in through 2 of those first quarters is about $750,000. I will say a portion of that is because as people becoming used to the tax does apply to revenues generated for 24, but a small portion of that. So we are definitely trending over what the revenue projection is. And then looking and where we felt $1 million was pretty appropriate for 25 is we collected 2 quarters in 24, about $500,000. And so we'll continue to watch that every quarter to see where we are. But the way it's looking now is we definitely will come in over budget on that one. The direction that came about when we developed this tax is we used it, number one, to support the finance department employee that we hired who's doing that. And we did purchase some online software. We are still looking for a data management as we talked about going out for financial software. We're going to include that in the package because right now it's very manual. The city administrator's wages and benefits, and I think that'll cost to go up a little bit because we started city administrator and we said, you don't need to spend any money on anything, right? You don't need supplies or travel. So we'll be bumping that up this year to cover some of those expenses that are necessary. You brought in an emergency manager, and I know that we're talking about some additional funds just to get that up and one-time running, but half-time person supporting some of those operating costs, and a police officer, which did not include a vehicle, of about $200,000. So this is just the governmental share. So looking at the $1 million revenue and taking those expenses in, it leaves about $334,000. It also was direction is we had to bring in a new revenue stream because as we saw, the revenues are not growing as quickly as the expenditure. So that was helping to close some of that gap when we were planning to budget using reserves. Yes.
I saw a news report about, I know we use Seattle software for this, that they're doing some things with their B&O and with, it seemed like leaning towards getting rid of it. So, or at least doing some restrictions. So I just wondered if you'd seen any of that and how that would impact us using their software to support us if they start changing their program up.
It's a software with a conglomeration of several cities. I would highly doubt that Seattle is getting rid of it. They might be raising it. They might be changing some of their parameters. Part of the change too is it's now required for us to go through the model B&O ordinance, which is working on updating. We'll be bringing that forward to council later. The software won't go away. It's owned by several cities. But I will say is, as we look at other software, we may decide not to use that software either and go with something local for us. So that is talking about, and we'll get into a bigger slide about B&O at the very end about where you see the history going and some of those items. So talking about this is looking at some of the direct revenues that are directly associated to some of the programs running. And remembering, I didn't want anybody to feel that they're being picked on because we are supported by taxes. We are a service agency. And for instance, finance department does not bring in revenue to support ourselves, but some of those revenues are restricted. And I just wanted to show what those are and how much the taxes are being used to supplement them. We're a service agency and we serve those with those tax dollars. So looking at the revenue other than taxes that we also collect is we have some state shared revenue that goes into the general pot. These are the liquor profits tax. Those are based on a per capita basis. Passport fees, which we've talked about, investment earnings and those investment service fees, facilities rents, administrative fees, not a lot of money, but for instance, when we do the $20 for you to sign up your utility account, that is a general fund operation and comes into the general fund. And then reduction of expenses, this is where we're passing our indirect allocation, and that indirect allocation are funds that we charge back to the utility funds for the administrative support we provide to them. And so it's actually a reduction in the expenses to the general fund is how we account for it. So as you can see in this chart down below, very few revenues are directly driven by specific programs, and the rest of it is made up of all of your general revenues, your taxes, and those types of items. Here's the government services that I talked about that do not have direct revenue streams. So you can see it's a legislative, it's executive, it's a clerk. We are service, human resources, finance, legal, information services, the auditors, all of that's involved. Portion of the Public Works Administration, they support a lot of government functions that we absorbed in that. Parks maintenance, cemetery maintenance, street maintenance, emergency management, facility maintenance, and debt payments that are coming out of all of these taxes that are not supported by any revenue stream. This is directly out of our annual financial report, and I pulled the statement of activity. So I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at it, but it's a pretty good picture of each of these functions. And these functions are actually defined by our state accounting manual. So general government, that's the clerks, that's the finance, that's the councils. And so here are the expenses that are taken to run this. And this is in a full GAAP, full accrual basis right here. And so here's the expenses and here's the charges that are directly related to supporting those. So you can see over here about $3.2 million is not supported by some of those revenue streams, which is made up of all of these general revenues down here. So I just want to take a minute and go through it because this is a great source of information. Security of persons and property, that is your police department, that's your Kitsap 911, your jail costs. So about $4.8 million, and this is as of 24, and we get, very little revenue that actually comes and supports it. I will say the criminal justice tax is down here in the sales tax, and that's about $150,000 a year. That doesn't go directly to that because this only talks about the grants and charges for services. So I thought this was a good picture to start and to see how these programs really are supplemented, because over here you can see transportation actually shows a revenue stream because they had so many grants come in and support those projects.
The profits in the dying.
And so then we look at the revenue. So if the first one we focus on is the criminal justice. Oh, so I was way off of my revenue projections. Criminal justice sales tax comes in about $270,000, and the fine and forfeitures come in. And so you can see those are growing, which will help, as well as the cameras. And then the rest of it is made up of grant and state shared revenue that goes directly to the security of persons and property. What the expenses are, the police operations, the muni court, public defender, prosecutors, all of those charges related to provide for the security of our people. So the general fund revenues support those programs, all of those taxes, about $5.2 million. So when we say we collect these revenues, we can justify them being used all for that purpose. Looking at the actual figures going over the years, so you can see where each one of those revenue streams are to give you a little bit of history and where we're going. And what's good is we have taken some of those, some of our savings, and you can see that we have increased our force, so which is making it supplemented more. So we are using some of those, and we are trying to make some additional cost and improvements to provide additional funds towards that. Is it enough? That's for you to decide, but I did want to show that we've made some good progression on those directions. And then when we get into development revenues, as you can see, it's and I know I had a question several weeks ago, is what happens if we make too much money in development fees that we aren't spending? So if you look at 5 years back, we are not in jeopardy of that. We are spending more than we are bringing in. You'll see 2023, we had a pretty good year with our revenues for both planning and engineering, lowest supplement then, but then the rest of the years are made up of the cost supplementing those programs. Health and Human Services, I don't have any dollars there. The grants fluctuate so often. And we're doing some of it out of our Fund 125, using some of those affordable housing dollars. But as we said, we do support it from general fund revenues to keep the operation of that department about $200,000. It's not supported by grants. The recreation program, so you can see that's your registration fees, your special event fees, your facility rentals, donations, grants, and the expenses are the recreation program, the urban forestry, and the special events. So right now, in 25, we have in the budget supporting those programs about $580,000 out of ours. And that has grown a little bit. You can see it's growing, it's grown there, and the revenues have grown, but the support has grown. If you want a successful, they've taken on the senior program, which does not have a revenue stream, but has a cost associated with it. So some of these items that we've taken on that don't have a revenue stream, we've had to supplement with the general fund, or not had to, but we've chosen to. Looking at street operations, we do not budget this in the general fund, but we do have it in a special revenue fund, and it is primarily supported by taxes coming out of, because we transferred to the government fund. So I just wanted to point out the only revenue stream coming in to support this street operations is we have a gas tax, which is state shared. So you can see there is not a lot of growth in that figure, and it's all based on per capita. And as you've heard, a lot of they were worried at the state because the gas tax had gone down as more electric vehicles come into play. Which one?
No, all this.
Oh, so this talks about what revenues there are, registration fees, special event fees. Oh, that was a yeah, copy and paste, a bad one. So sorry about that. Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
No, that's right. I just want
The increased gas tax from the state legislature raise.
So yeah, so don't pay attention to that, sorry. But what this street program does support is it supports your road, it supports your roadside maintenance, it supports your striping, your signals, and a huge cost from street operations, as we talked about, is your street lights. Every time we take on a new development, we take on the ownership of that road and the street lights, maintaining them, and we don't have a lot of additional revenues coming in to support that. So if you look down here, you'll see that the gas tax is only about 250,000, which is good in 23. When we started collecting that transportation benefit district, we were able to bring in 25% to support that, helping maintain some of those funds in the general fund and also supporting the expenditures. So that is, you can see that we're supplementing the rest of those funds by other taxes.
Deb, can we go back to the recreation program? Fees, donations, uses. So I occasionally get some questions, complaints from citizens that the city doesn't provide any funding for parks and recreation, that they have to support themselves with registration fees, etc. And if I'm reading this correctly, and I just want to make sure, I can report that we are supplementing them above and beyond the fees they collect by, in 2025, approximately $600,000. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So looking at the general fund bottom line, you can see this, I've highlighted where all of our revenues have come in, the budgets in 25 and 26. I did want to point out some of these one-time dollars because, as you saw in 2022, we used about 190 or 1,092,000 of the ARPA funds to support those operations, to support revenue growth. And then also too, in 23, we used 824,000. In 24, we used the remaining 196. And in 24, we also had the catch-up grant for Knoll Road that we brought in as revenue that year, because the grant spreads it out over years and then pays us that last payment once we meet all their percentages. It's very complicated. And if you ask me to explain it, I'd have to bring in my grant person to help me. It's just, they change the percentages because you have to have a match, and it's also with multiple grants. It just changes all of those percentages. So this was the catch-up figure. This was a catch-up figure to fund the roundabout portion of the Knoll Road and or the tunnel, or one or each of them. And then another portion went to our street transportation fund. So what I also wanted to point out is here's our transfer to reserves, because that really is not an expenditure. Those are monies that we're putting to capital reserves to fund other projects. So I did want to highlight those down below, and you can see in 25 and 26, they're quite a bit higher. And so in 25, these higher expectations are higher expenditures. We did do the Microsoft 365 license upgrade, which had a one-time cost, which is quite a bit higher. Engineering professional services, we talked about why they're under budget. They have the 8th Avenue study as well as the RAISE grant. And then the capital transfer for park acquisition and police vehicles was made in 25, the 860,000 for the property. And I think it was about 160 for the 2 police vehicles. And in 26, we are going to start to see, you'll see the expenditure come down, is we have the last payment for the 2015 debt payment. So that final payment's in 25. So that's good news. Looking at these, I pulled these straight out of the budget, and these are all our best forecasting tool, or as the mayor would say, educated guess. This trends about 5 years of history, looking at the growth factors of expenditures and the budgets and the capital plans going forward. Yes.
And that's the debt payment for City Hall, just for
Correct.
people
Thank
listening.
you. Yes. Thank you for clarifying. So what this does is it makes you a little worrisome, and this is why you plan ahead and conserve. So if we continued at the same trend for revenue growth and expenditure growth, we are not going to be supporting ourselves once we get to 2027 minimally, or 28. Yes.
And is that assuming sales tax remains at 1%?
Yeah. So if we did the history and it showed of 1% growth, that would, there's a huge spreadsheet, and it just takes the average of all of those growth factors and puts it into this
Awesome.
forum for us.
Great.
Yes.
Awesome.
But again, are we too conservative in projecting these numbers? But the growth factor was based on actual numbers coming in. And here's just a different way to look at it. This is general fund, so you can see the lines. So the operating is blue and the revenue. So it just shows the trend is if we keep going at this trend without reducing our expenditures or increasing our revenues, we will be in those figures. And then here is a general fund, which shows the type of revenues collected. And so you can see the largest, you can see the beginning balance here, right? This is basically our reserves. And if we continue at that pace, we use up our reserves. Probably about 2028, those will be gone. Largest is our taxes. So you can see that is growing. So it's just a good picture. And mind you, these are not perfect, but they hopefully give us an overall picture. As imagine several years ago, when I looked at these, because I have these for utility funds as well, I went, oh, your water fund's going to be in trouble in about 3 years. And that's when we have raised our rates to cover those. So that's great.
And something this doesn't take into consideration, I assume, is Oxford, JP Morgan Chase, all of them estimate about a 30 to 40% chance of a recession in the next 12 months. Multiply that by 5 years, and it's probably going to happen eventually, certainly before 2032. And then sales tax would probably dip.
Yeah, all your revenues would dip. And that's why we tend to use a history. And part of it is the conservatism too, is I expect the expenditures growing, are we estimating too much growth or not? But we try to use at least that 6 or 7 years of history to get those figures. But yeah, this doesn't take into account those anomalies, right?
Thank you. And I have to head out, everyone. Sorry.
Okay. See you, Doug.
Sorry. See you, Doug. Always any questions you have, Mr. Tabor?
So Deb, clearly, controlling expenditures is the first place we should look into the future. What other, in terms of increasing revenue, what other levers are available to us? We pulled the B&O tax lever. Okay. That seems to be working as we wanted in terms of funding the priorities we wanted it to. we can increase our utility rates, correct? Just kind of walk us through what, looking forward, what are what levers do we have still at our disposal?
And hopefully, look at this, you led me right into that. Thank you. So again, the revenues are growing at a rate less than expenditures. So here's some of our options. You can increase your rates. We can implement some new revenues. We can, strategically, economically develop where we need to be, and that will help. I can't imagine where we'd be right now if we didn't have that college marketplace up there, right? So there's strategic economic development. Grants, we're always looking at grant opportunities, reduction in expense, and it's also maybe through attrition. Sometimes some of us old people who retire and, bring in something different or figuring out way to reduce this that way as well. So those are just some of the options you want to look at. Obviously, our people are one of the highest costs, and so we try to evaluate that every time a position comes vacant on what's the best way to fill that. So one other thing I wanted to point out is some of our debt obligations before we even get into more of the revenue streams that we can focus on. Focusing on the debt, the final 2015 City Hall, because that was done in several different debt issues. So a portion of it ends in the 2025, but the full debt with the final payment due in 2033. So we owe, as of the 31st of December, not too bad, $2.6 million for this project. Vehicle debt, the final payments in 26, it's on a rotating basis. It won't go away. We'll probably, as Administrator Gelder talked about, I was trying to get your official title, sorry. Talked about, as we talked about leasing and how can we be more predictable and sustainable with those. So it's not that it's going to go away. It'll be replaced with something different. City Hall refunding, final payment 2031, balance of about $711,000, not a lot. And that final payment is December 31st or 2031. So then the Knoll Road, the latest issue we just did was for Knoll Road, the Public Works Property Admin Building, and that final payment will not be until 2040. And right now, the outstanding balance of December 31st is $2.2 million. So those are our existing debts. These are future debts that we've been talking about and which we'll be getting ready to go forward with in the next couple of months. Is the project that Knoll Road is going on right now. We anticipate issuing debt for about $2.5 million. That's where we plan to use our real estate excise tax to make those payments. The Nordic Cottages, about $2.5 million, and we will be using the affordable housing sales tax to pay those payments. The PERC, right now, we're anticipating $5.6 million, but as we get the final estimates in and the bid results, that may change. And we went to ask for more money from the PFD, or we haven't yet, but that's the plan. We will be going and ask. And so that could change. But right now, this is under the current plan. This is what we have, about $15.6 million. And then again, the renewal of the debt for the vehicles, as I said, they won't go away. We'll just be rounding it to differently. And then when we still haven't established a funding piece yet for is the 2026 Public Works facility, moving on to the next phase. So that one's still out there. So again, the thing is right in front of me. I can't read it. Okay, so one of the things that I want to point out, some operational costs that we have upcoming that we're going to have to think about is we are going to have a new recreation event center. That is going to take money to operate, and I don't believe the fees are going to be able to sustain that operation. So we need to think ahead with, and we will be growing more programs and bringing more revenue in, but is it enough to cover that? The debt, hopefully we're covered through the real estate excise tax, so that won't be a factor. Additional parks, every time we take on a new park, every time we take on a new street, it is money that we have to pay to maintain that. And I was saying it's also additional customer service. The police department has to provide coverage for more citizens. We have to provide more service for the billings, for the utilities, as well as any of those other government functions. So just reminding you is growth, what we say is growth pays for growth, but it really doesn't in a lot of cases. So we also have, is what you pointed out, is increased aging and infrastructures. I think we're getting better at proactively planning, but we're not perfect. And there's a lot of things that we haven't taken into account that we need to plan for. And then, again, looking at the police vehicles, and this is something the city administrator will work with the police chief on, we planned an 8-year cycle. Is it too short? Those cars are heavily used. Is it not enough? And And then unfortunately, we know that items are not made the same as when I was in high school or grade school. So, and, you know, looking at some of the opportunities, are there ways to offset some of that? And then again, the question that we brought up is, are we putting enough or too much to our reserves for future capital projects? And those are all things that I think you should, need to be discussed during the budget process. Yes.
So two questions. We talked about, like cutting expenses is one of the first places. When we talked about the solid waste discussion, we primarily focused on the impact on our ratepayers. Is it too early to know if we do go the direction of contracting out and removing that utility, what the operating cost expense to the city? Now, I know most, it's utility, so it covers, but as you pointed out, there is utilities have impact on the general fund. Is it too early to know how that will impact our general fund expenses for that?
I think that's part of our process and our discussion, and Diane can add more to this. But that's always a thought. And as we talked about, are there ways to accommodate that? We have not raised the utility rate on solid waste because quite frankly, the solid waste funds can't afford it. So we've talked about when we pass it on to a provider, do we increase those? Do we bring in a fee? But we definitely are talking about how the other utilities as well as the government's going to absorb those. So that is definitely part of the overall conversations.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering, will that end up being an expense or a savings? I just think it's probably too early to know,
Yeah.
but just, the other thing is, we had, the Law and Justice Center up there as a debt we'd have to go out for. And I'm assuming when you had it up there, you were looking at it from the building perspective. But as you pointed out, there's operations. But I think any of the discussion we've had around that, which has been fairly loose so far, was to bring in other entities to be part of that facility, police, the sheriffs, municipal court, So I would think we would anticipate that there would be contributions from those entities on operation costs. So
That would be a good assumption, but that is way early in the conversations. I
Yeah.
don't think we've
well,
gone into that.
because it was on
yet.
here, so it's like,
Yeah,
so,
I just.
yeah, if we do that, we want to house all those things together, but our partners that we're housing need to contribute.
Right. And there's options. And I think if you get to that point, you're going to have a lot of opportunity to explore, because you could go for voted debt and see if the people approve that. You can, there's different ways, but I just wanted to point out that was something that's brought up in the future vision. We haven't even talked about how to structure it, how to fund it beyond that, but very, very good points. The more you build, the more you have to maintain too, right? So here's some revenue opportunities that we talk about. So the parking fees, and as we brought up the new ability to do the criminal justice sales tax, both City Administrator Gelder and I sat through a webinar, and he kind of went over it a little bit last week. We have the ability with the councilmanic to approve the 1/10 of 1%. You have to meet some particular guidelines in order to accommodate that. The county has that same opportunity. The county collected, and they do not have to share it with the cities. Now, I don't think they would and not share it, but the question is do we want to implement it, and what are the restrictions? So I have a few questions out right now to the city attorney to kind of help guide some of the laws and some of the questions, because quite frankly, the state doesn't know how to implement it. And we did include in your packet the presentation that the city minister Gelder and I attended, and he said to really focus on the rules about stacking, and they go into it a little bit on slide 5 if you're looking for that. But there's still lots of questions to answer, but they are giving you that, and I will say is they are also offering millions of dollars of grant opportunities. However, you cannot apply for the grant unless you've implemented this 1/10 of 1% of the sales tax.
No,
Oh.
if I could.
Okay, sorry,
jump
go
in.
ahead.
No, that's all right. It is one of the most convoluted, as many of the revenue opportunities are. You have to meet the criteria of being able to apply for the grant in order to be able to implement the sales tax. You don't have to implement the sales tax in order to apply. You have to minimally be receiving revenues from one of the existing sales taxes. And so we qualify for that through the county. of the criminal justice sales tax, the 270 or whatever. So that kind of ticks that box from a funding standpoint. But it would open us up to potentially applying for grants, which are really best for one time. They wouldn't serve us well for adding staff or capacity to the city to provide services. So,
And that's why I mean, it's confusing because I interpreted it completely different.
Before we get too far, I just want to, and under future revenue opportunities, we have parking fees. I just want to make sure we're all clear and the public is clear that in our resolution that to start charging for some parking spaces in the summer of 2026, we promise to commit those revenues to stay downtown for increased parking, transportation, and public safety primarily. Okay, I just want to make sure that's very clear on the record.
Perfect. Another opportunity that we have is a levy lid lift, and this does require a vote of the citizens. Right now, we have a current rate as of $1.01, a little bit over $1.01, which creates a levy of about $3.2 million. The maximum rate the city can collect is $1.60. So you could do a levy lid lift to the vote of the people, and then we would be able to capture that additional 58 cents, creating a revenue of $1.8 million. However, that difference can fluctuate. We've had the rate go up sometimes when assessed values have decreased. So you continue to monitor that formula. When we talked about bringing in the B&O tax, this is one thing is as you increase your revenues, this is a true tax that goes to your city's business, the landowners, right? And so why we decided to go with the B&O is because a lot of services that we provide to our business community are not property owners. And so we wanted to create that revenue that really was collecting from some of the people that are utilizing our services and not paying into the city for those property taxes. But you do have that availability. We would need a timeline and a process to go through that, but that is a definite revenue stream. A park district, again, it can't be run by the city, but it is something that the citizens came forward with the group and said, we wanted to get a separate park district. You could separate our parks and recreation program and our parks, and they would have their own funding source of property tax to support that.
That is really, with our given revenue structures, the way they are right now, that's the only way, a parks district is the only way that we would be able to pay for and maintain the full-fledged Poulsbo Event and Rec Center. It's the only way it's going to work. So just my 2 cents.
But also, I mean, I think, Mayor, when we looked at the numbers previously in the level of subsidy from the general fund to the Parks and Recreation program was 600 some odd thousand.
A lot of money.
So if there was an MPD, and that is really the only thing, we would no longer see the revenue income from the program fees, and our savings to the general fund is that 600,000. That'd be the freed up capacity.
It'll be an interesting conversation if in fact we do the MPD, the Metropolitan Park District, what parks would go to the Parks District and what parks the city would want to keep. You thinking about a Parks District and an independent board managing Waterfront Park. So that's a very interesting conversation. So the savings that we would get from a Metropolitan Park District might not be totally what we're looking at, because we'd want to keep some of our.
It's also not just about money, right?
Yes,
We
it's not about
do not
just money.
maintain control then of.
Absolutely. That's why I'm saying it will be an interesting conversation if the citizens decide to go for a Metropolitan Park District, because they would lose effectively to a new board or a new group of elected officials who Fish Park or Waterfront Park, if the city chose to do that. Just putting it out there.
Since we're into this, my memory, and it's probably wrong, was that Parks District can go to 25 cents out of on a max levy rate.
Yeah, I thought it was 75 first, and then there's an additional 25, but I can look at it and.
Okay, we're at $1. I just trying to get an idea of $1 is 3.2 million. My memory was 25 cents. Could be more than that, but
I don't remember.
okay, just as
My memory isn't as good as it used to be.
Yeah, I thought it was less than $1.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and
Yeah.
the 650-ish thousand you mentioned, I read that as to recreation. Is that to the whole Parks and Rec? Because I would think if we would still have maintenance of whatever parks we kept. So I don't know that it would even be the whole 600 and some thousand. Yeah, that's really to run the recreation programs that were.
It will be a
That's-
very complicated conversation, okay? And like, heads up, I mean, we're really speculating here because the voters haven't even voted for it. But if we do head down that road, and frankly, that we have no way internally to pay for the perk to maintain it. I mean, we could probably build it, but we would never be able to maintain it effectively. So we need to, those conversations are going to be happening the next year, I'd imagine, about how we're going to do this.
I think we are getting almost to the end. So some of the focus that we wanted to talk about or been talk is our B&O taxes. So again, same figures. I gotta move this, it's covering my stuff. So it's same figures we'd already talked about. We have $1 million in the budget. We're probably going to be bringing higher than that. The current rate that we have is 0.2%, 0.002. And right now we have an exemption for businesses not collecting and submitting sales tax of 20,000. And we have an exemption for 125,000 for businesses collecting retail sales tax. Looking forward, I received questions from a couple of council members, and we talked about it internally. Is what would make this easier? From my perspective, is number one is if we do any changes, it would be nice to be effective January 1st because mid-year changes, mid-year
You don't wanna do that.
implementation turned out to be a little bit of a crazy time. It would also be much simpler, I believe, for the taxpayers as well as for my department to have one exemption. Because once we implement it, it's all those things you don't anticipate because a business comes and says, part of our business is retail and part of it's not. So now they're benefiting from 2 exemptions where we can make it one exemption. I did have our accounting clerk, Gretchen, run the numbers and said, if we moved it up to 125,000, what loss of revenue would it be? And just based roughly on last year's numbers, about a $40,000 decrease. So that's pretty minimal compared to the amount of benefit that we have. Many times, as people are frustrated with the tax because the local B&O tax is different than the state B&O tax, different rules, different calculations. So they are right now doing the model ordinance, and I have Gretchen sitting on that committee for the conference call because AWC leads that, and the city of Seattle is a very strong participant. And Councilmember Stern and Newell said, we want to get rid of this reporting for zero returns because by state law you have to turn in a return where it's 0. So they're trying to make the model B&O ordinance. They've heard the complaints not only from us but from others, so they're trying to incorporate those. There won't be many changes, but that is one that I heard that we could implement if we want to. That it hasn't been adopted, has to go before the legislature, but there are some things that they are trying to listen to. So by being active on that committee, we are having a little bit of a voice, which is helpful. Right. And so so that's where we are at with that. And that's when I looked at Bainbridge, I believe Bainbridge had an exemption of 150,000, although their tax rate is lower. They're 0.001. Bremerton's rate is 0.002, but they have a higher limit because their primary source, which they really can't get rid of, is the shipyard. And so they have quite an exemption. And I would not be surprised if Port Orchard doesn't implement a B&O soon, but they don't have one yet. So any more discussion on the B&O, I believe, yes.
Yeah, number one, thank you, Rob and Debbie and Becky for pursuing this. We took on the B&O tax with the intention of giving a predictable source of revenue for the city administrator moving forward, office and burden and incidentals. With Councilman McVeigh, felt very strongly about adding 2 additional police officers instead of waiting in the wings on just the existing general fund revenue. I think at this point, we need to right-size it. This is the same approach we're taking to the proposed future public works facility and the discussion around solid waste. Let's try to get it right. So as we move forward, we got the right size we're planning for, not just anything and everything. The burden right now, as Debbie has stated, is the filing on even individuals of businesses of one, LLC, independent contractors, real estate agents, it's burdensome. Number two, in a lot of those cases, there's the accounting where they're going to turn to a professional accountant. That's burdensome. Then finally, financial, the tax itself, if it applies. I think we need to exempt and find out the proper level. We're looking at 125. I wouldn't mind looking at 200. What's the reason for it? Our city comp plan states that we are a business-friendly community. And the majority of our businesses are small mom and pop operations. And if we look at the track record right now on B&O, what is it, Debbie? Some 5 businesses account for 60 or 70% of the revenue. What's that? I know we're talking in generalities and not business specific.
Off the top of my head, I think it was more than 5 or 6, but the number of businesses that supported are the larger businesses. They support more than 50% of that revenue.
So I think we have some leeway on that. I remain adamant about a predictable source of revenue earmarked for the city administrator office. We talked about in implementing that it was professional, it was predictable, and there'd be continuity. And so having this earmark separate from the general fund that existed at that time gives it that predictability. I thought it was very fair that it should be borne by business because business is going to be the major beneficiary of predictability in their plans. And then at that time as well, we had the carjackings going on and impact from that behavior. And we needed, in any event, Mayor, to step up our police force. But this wasn't meant to be just another revenue source like we were talking about before, at least in my mind, one of 7. Where we talk about, well, where else can we go for revenue? Occasionally we need to right size. And the point is to decrease revenue if it's covering what the intention was. And so I resist seeing this even in any sense of the word, a windfall of a greater or lesser magnitude. I do understand we need to cover the inflationary aspects of the city administration office, of the police, because we have, once we take it on, it's ongoing and it increases. But I'd like to see us right size it, and I'd like to be willing to take a decrease in the overall revenue if we can get that right sizing done correctly.
You know, I want to say something about this very quickly. And then Mr. Eckert and then Ms. Livedall. About 5, 8, maybe 9 years ago, I had a very long conversation with a guy named Phil Rockefeller, who was the long-term Democratic state senator, well-regarded, well-respected, about taxes and how they worked in the state of Washington. And he said, basically, they're sales tax driven. And the reason why it happened that way is back when they created the sales tax, the vast majority of the business industries in this state were manufacturing, production, those kind of physical activities. We weren't a service sector economy. That's what was going on when our tax structures were created. Well, that's changed radically in the last 100 years. We are a service sector economy. And what's going on now is the service sector is not paying their fair share. They're not paying their fair share. We've got a lot of people that are service people working in this city, using the benefits of this city, and they're not being taxed because they don't collect sales tax. They don't have to collect sales tax. It's a flaw in Washington state tax structures, my opinion. But Phil Rockefeller actually agreed with me. I said, why are you exempting all these people, all these service sales in Washington state? Why are you exempting them? Why is that occurring? And he said, well, we can't get it through the legislature effectively. It's been exempted for so long. You know, that's the way the tax structure was. So all the accountants, all the financial planners, all the real estate agents, all of the service sectors, the doctors, all of them, tax-free in Washington state because we don't have an income tax here. We have no income tax in the state. This is a way where we fair up the taxes in the city of Poulsbo. We make them fair. The service sector that operates out of our city pays their fair share. It's just not the little retailer. It's not the mom and pop stores on Front Street. It's not Walmart. It's not TNC. Okay, it's the service sector that doesn't pay their fair share. Not in the state of Washington, not anywhere close. So I think that we can adjust some of these numbers. I mean, I don't want to gouge people, but the service sector in the state of Washington, which we can't control, but the service sector in the state of Washington and the service sector in the city of Poulsbo should pay their fair share. There's a lot of really rich business people that don't pay their fair share, not in this state. My 2 cents, Mr. Eckert and Ms. Livedall.
Yeah, so question first. Deb, you said about leveling it to where there's only one exception and not, I mean, how much would that truly help your staff? I mean, is it nice or is it needed?
It's a benefit to both the taxpayer and the city, because the taxpayers have been the ones most confused when they're filling out their tax returns. And Gretchen has been helping a lot with them, and we individually help them. I think it's a lot of help for us to keep it straight. And I think it's also a lot of help for the taxpayers, because too, now as you're eliminating double exemptions, because possibly they're collecting retail on some and wholesale on others. So I think it's just simplification that helps both sides.
Okay. Because to both points, I very much saw this as we need everybody that's using the city services to pay, to help support those services. And some of it we earmarked to the city administrator position, emergency management, these big services that we need. But we recognized there are definitely industries in our city, businesses large and small, that are not contributing to what they're using. So I would be more inclined to say we raise the exemption on those collecting retail and eliminate the exemption on those not. But then we give a big exemption for those not, because it seems like then we are kind of going against that theory. I know the number is an estimate of only would be about $40,000 reduction. I'm leery of any reduction based on the entire rest of the presentation of, we need to be looking at, increases. That said, you did highlight, we've got a little over 300,000 of the B&O unaccounted for right now. But what I'll go back to, again, in the light of supporting businesses, $40,000 almost pays for about half the salary of a code enforcement officer. And what's a code enforcement officer going to do but make our businesses safer, more effective, and the overall city safer by making sure folks are operating safely. So, and efficiently and environmentally sound and all those things. So to me, it's only 40,000, but that could pay for that staff member that I think we truly desperately need.
Okay, so we have Britt and then we have Gary.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I'm very visual. So when you show the slide where in 2.5, 3 years, we could be out of reserves and, expenditures or revenues not keeping up with expenditures, that we can feel fine right now, but your job and ours too is to look to the future. So I don't know that I'm interested in slashing and burning the B&O. I mean, I do think some simplifications make sense, and to put some things into real numbers and perspective. The accountant that I use to file my federal income tax wants $300 a quarter to file B&O. I don't make that much money to even that's way more than the B&O so that's just.
Thanks, Mayor. I could be interested in tweaking the B&O a little bit around the edges. I'd be most interested in eliminating confusion, continuing to focus on fairness. I think it was absolutely the right thing to do at the right time. I'm not quite sure exactly what Mr. Stern has in mind in terms of right sizing. But I would say that it was much more to be used beyond just the public administrator's salary. There were a lot of needs we had from public safety to not pulling money out of reserves and strong fiscal management was needed. So to say it was just primarily the city administrator and if we're raising more than that or one or two of the little things, we should right size it. I don't agree with that. I think would need a lot more conversation.
Go ahead, Doug.
I think part of this gets into the level of effort required for our community to contribute. And so just kind of in the small business standpoint, last year I filled out B&O tax with the state of Washington because service providers do pay B&O tax to the state of Washington. Because my level was exempt, I was exempt. However, if my business activity had actually occurred inside of city limits, I would have had to pay city. In addition, the state's online form took me, 10 minutes. It is hard. And so what we're talking about, I think, is the value or the burden on our community where we're not getting much incremental gain in revenue. And can we make that so it's easier on our community so that they can pay it? It's great to hear that there's a working group. It would be wonderful if the state's B&O system could sit there and say, hey, you're in city Poulsbo or whatever city you are, and collect it just like sales tax works so that there's a single payer. It's not that way now, but one of the other numbers I heard is, and I'm going to get it wrong, Deb, but 60% of the filings in the city of Poulsbo right now are generating 98% of the revenue. And so the question is, do we, the other 40% that are generating 2% of the revenue and incurring accounting fees and other things, that's, I think, what we owe it to our community to look at and go, hey, does this make sense? I guess paying your accountant more than you're paying the city of Poulsbo on your tax return, those are the kind of things that I've not heard it just from Britt. I've heard it from numerous small businesses. They're like scratching their head. Why is my accountant getting rich off of giving you $25? And so that's part of the conversation I think we need to have.
I think it needs to be simplified. I agree. The fact that that everyone has to file period for whatever reason, zero is nuts. Okay, I agree. I think it has to be simplified. I think the concept is I think though the concept is fair. I think it's time, and it annoys the heck out of me that the state of Washington's tax system is the way it is because it's not fair. It really isn't.
Can I suggest on the B&O conversation that we come back with some additional information for council, really looking at not only sort of as Councilmember Stern actually beat me to the punch, I really that whole looking that long out range because there are inflationary costs related to any of our expenses. But look at some of the simplifications that we can propose, what the financial impact might be, but also looking at that over time. We can bring some of that back maybe in different ways, graphically, et cetera, that you can noodle on a little bit more and provide some direction.
Tweaking is welcome.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask is how much control do we have over the process? How much can we influence the filing and all that? So if that could be included, because sure, whatever we can influence to make it easier, we should talk about and try to do. But I don't know how much we control.
So very good question. Much of what we control is regulated by the state legislature. And what happens is why you will never be able to report on the state with the state B&O is because cities like Seattle and Tacoma and Bellevue, they really lead the program because they're such the strong collectors of it. And it's very important to them to keep it local. They do not want it to go through the state. They are listening. They are bringing people to table because I did see in their draft today that they were putting out about filing zero returns. Now it will be optional to the city whether they collect them or whether they don't. We do have to come forward with the B&O ordinance because as the state adopts the model being an ordinance, we will have to come back and update it. So as that gets closer to when we know it is, we can come back with some of these figures and talk about it. One thing I did want to clarify though, is when you talked about the service industry lowering their exemption to zero, the model ordinance does require a minimum of $20,000 of revenue. So that's where our limitations are.
No, I was saying those that don't collect the retail. So like right now we have 10,
Mhm.
and you were saying raise it up. I was saying I would more plan to go the other direction because the goal was
Right.
the others are already collecting sales tax. Those folks weren't,
Yeah.
rather than
But
putting them both high. And I can see going higher on those collecting the exemption for those collecting retail sales tax. I would be less inclined to want to do that for those not.
yeah. So just so you know, the 20,000 is a minimum exemption.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a technical clarification, Rob and Deb. 3 or 4 PowerPoints before, there was one called Statement of Activity, Revenue and Expenses, Principal Debt Payments. There on the right side under General Revenues, it listed property taxes, 3,039,000, retail sales use taxes, 7.795 million. Business and occupation, 3.436 million. That's referring to what? That was in the lower right margin. There we are.
These are the general taxes, and keep in mind, this is every fund. So this is not just general funds. So when we talk about retail sales tax, this also has our affordable housing tax, our transportation benefit tax, the criminal justice tax. It's not just sales tax that we collect in general fund. Business and occupation tax are utility taxes as well as our B&O taxes. Correct.
I'm sorry about the speech, but this is one of these hot button issues for me. I mean, it really bothers me that our taxing system in the state of Washington is so unfair. It's really, really unfair. Okay, where are we, Deb? Are we about done? Well, oh, look at there. Any questions?
Could I ask? I do want to get a sense from council really about sort of what you might be thinking. And this is going back to House Bill 2015 for the public safety sales tax that can be councilmanically executed. And the reason why I ask is just it's a timing issue. If the council wanted to move forward with that and take action on it and have it begin on January 1 in terms of the collection of that revenue, we would actually have to take action prior to early October in order to be able to transmit that to the Department of Revenue so that they can program that, because they only begin the collection of new revenues on 3 times a year. So it basically would be either we take action by October for January, some other time for an April start or a July start. So just was curious. We didn't spend a lot of time on that sales tax, and I just wanted to make sure that we walked away with some level of understanding and or potential direction.
Oh, I don't know enough. I looked through the presentation. We talked a little bit spotted here. I don't know enough tonight, Rob, to be able to go yes or no. I'm sorry, just don't.
No, I understand. What
Fair.
what additional, I know if you don't know what you don't know, it's kind of hard to define what it is that you need to know. What else is it that you think we could?
How much would it raise?
About
What-
$650,000.
What can you use it for?
It can be used quite broadly for any number of things from.
So Rob, back to my esteemed colleague who said no more questions. I think it might be, I understand, it might be helpful to take a subset of that presentation that was attached and go over it at the next council meeting.
Okay.
So that we can we've heard it, let us read through it, and then let's kind of go systematically through that presentation would be my
I
thought.
think the thing,
Before we shut this down, what I'm hearing from Rob is he needs direction and we have timelines. Our next council meeting is not for weeks. So we all had this or do we have one next week?
No,
I'm tired.
we have one in 2 weeks.
But
In 2
we need to provide answers and we have the information. So It is not, it is only 7:40. And I would like it, where we're supposed to discuss this, and they purposely stacked the agenda with only this conversation so that this didn't happen, to where we get to the end of the night and we cut things off because it's been too long. So I would prefer we don't take no more questions and we cut it off and we come back later and we have the conversation now, please. I've read it. I think, as much as I do not like the idea of adding taxes, we have, if we want the grants, and I don't like the fact that the grant only provides 75% and has to have 25% matching and ends in 3 years. I don't like the way they ended up with the final law on this. I really don't. However, like as Britt pointed out earlier, Health and Human Services is largely grant funded. We have, there's a lot of things that if we were to add this tax and then pursue the grant, that in the next 3 years that we could do, even if it's just supplementing the income that we have now to make those graphs that Deb put together and showed us look better. Even if we don't hire additional officers, we can supplement that deep dip into our general fund that we're doing now to pay for the ones we have. And
What are timelines here? When do you need to know this information for sure?
So we could come back in on the 3rd. I think that's September 3rd is the next meeting. Basically, and I will have to come back with the information about the actual timing piece relative to the, oh, sorry, thank you.
Okay, so on the business agenda for September 3rd, I think the thing that I want to know is if we don't pass it here and the county can go ahead and pass it. I want to know if every time the county passes a tax, we don't get anything or get very little. So if we're gonna get taxed anyway, I'd rather have it done locally so that we have some control over the funding.
And I actually have an email out to our city attorney to ask some of those specific questions because it wasn't clear to me.
Yes.
Is can the county still pass the tax and we have the tax and that doubles up, or once we pass the tax, the county? So I have those questions and hopefully we'll have better answers.
Well, that's another reason we do it next meeting.
So, but I would, not business agenda, but we'll bring it back to the workshop.
I was just trying to help you move it along.
I appreciate that.
It might also be helpful, Mr. Gelder, if you might talk with a few of your colleagues in other cities, see what they're planning to do. That might be helpful to have that information to make a decision.
And I did reach out to other finance directors and they're all debating it. They're not all certain where they're going with it, but we'll continue as we learn more, everybody's decision starts becoming clearer.
Okay, so this is going to be on the workshop agenda next council meeting, and then we'll have more information to move it forward. But we're going to have the time in order to enact it if we need to, correct? There's no hard deadlines here. No. Okay.
We would need to be able to pass an ordinance basically in time to notify the Department of Revenue by October 18th if council chooses to act in order for it to be implemented January 1.
Which is where you want it implemented.
Well, what's the timeline applying for the grant? Because if we're doing
That
this
is
in
not
order to
open
be able,
yet. They're still finalizing the.
I know the director said she was going to go out with a call on who intends to apply.
That
And you did
happened.
not have to qualify on every checkbox yet in order to answer that call. But it was more of an intention, just so she could figure out how many pieces of the pie she needed to divide it by. But there's going to be a timeline there too.
Well, I think we need to know all of that information more, which we can do in the next council meeting, correct? Have a
Correct.
question. If you have additional questions regarding this, make sure you get to Administrator Gelder and let him know what you need to know. Okay? All right. So are we good on this? Okay. Let's see where we are on this agenda. I think we're at continued comment from citizens. Oh, Mr. Stern, well, since there is no public here, go ahead, Mr. Stern.
So I want to compliment the mayor and the city administrator and staff tonight, Larissa and Debbie, obviously. I like this idea, this was very much like a finance committee meeting as a committee of the whole. where we took 2 hours, which used to be Finance Committee twice a month, and really can delve in deep and take the time to really look. Too often, and it may be unavoidable, Mayor, we have to stack up multiple departments and multiple needs, and we do flybys rather than, or touch and goes when we need to land. And tonight was a great example of landing. So number one, I want to thank everyone for that and the time and patience it took to present that. Yeah, that's my comment right now.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. That was nice. Okay, any other comments from council at all? Go ahead.
Sorry.
We're on mayor and council comments.
Okay, I can just do it there. First, I would say thank you for approving the idea of the banners, US flag banners. One thing with that is, as we discussed doing these and we possibly do more, I know with the pride flag, we flew one here at City Hall. I didn't propose that with this because we already have the flag flying at City Hall. But in the future, I've talked about Suquamish. But for those that don't know, the flagpole we have out front is not a real flagpole. It's actually a marina flag staff. It does not allow for us to fly another country's flag, which Suquamish is a sovereign nation. So just down the road, as we discuss all these things, and if we discuss City Hall at any point, I would like to throw in the idea that we look at adding or replacing a actual real flagpole and maybe a second, so we could fly other nations, because we could not put Suquamish's flag on that pole because we'd have to put it underneath, and that is inappropriate and illegal.
Okay. All right, any other concerns from the council? Any other thing we need to talk about? Go ahead. Mr.
Future
Chair.
agenda items, last comment. I enjoying tonight's format very much and keeping us fresh and focusing on one topic. I'd like to suggest to the city administrator, to the mayor and her staff, that once a year we create a workshop like this. I don't know what to call it, capacities and policies involving the review of programs and projects, both existing and future, where we match up our reserves and revenue sources and what we call capacities against policies, where the council can make decisions about priorities and adjust that annually, like we much do our capital improvement plan or transportation improvement plan. Those are 5 and 20 years out, but the ability for council to weigh in more frequently at a set time on matching capacities with policies and programs.
Okay, thank you. Any other future concerns, questions to council? Okay. Move to adjourn.
I moved.
There's a move, there's a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. We are adjourned.